Chapter 1450. The armies of the human, demon, and water races joined forces and rushed to the north to kill the remnants of the demon army. An hour later, Ji Tianxing and the heavenly net demon emperor led the demon army and rushed to the battlefield 4,000 miles north. Ji Tianxing thought that the human and water race armies had already slaughtered the remnants of the demon army. But when he was about to reach the battlefield, he found that the human and water race armies were fighting against the 2 million strong demon army. The mountains and wastelands in a radius of a few hundred miles were the battlefield. The battlefield was extremely cruel. The armies of both sides were like 3 torrents that gathered together and clashed fiercely. Flesh and blood splattered all over the battlefield. Broken corpses and bones were everywhere. The ground was dyed red with blood. The soldiers of the various races charged bravely, and their battle cries shook the sky. Their morale was high, and their fighting spirit was soaring. Damn it, the demon camp actually sent reinforcements. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing immediately understood that the 2 million strong demon army had come from the demon camp to provide reinforcements. The news of the demon emperor's death and the defeat of the demon army must have reached the demon camp and summoned reinforcements. The human, demon, and water race armies added up to about 5 million people. They were not afraid of the 2 million strong demon army. The 5 million soldiers of the 3 races were divided into 3 armies and attacked the demon army from 3 directions. They would definitely have the upper hand and the advantage. However, Ji Tianxing looked to the north and saw a few demon armies coming from the north to provide reinforcements. Those demon armies were at least 3 to 4 million strong. They were like a black tide that covered the mountains and the earth and swept over like a gust of wind. When those reinforcements arrived, the demon army would have the advantage of numbers again. By then, the outcome would be unpredictable. Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing's expression turned grave. He muttered to himself, "The demon emperor has been killed by me. This is a huge blow to the demon army's morale." However, the demon camp still is close to 10 million soldiers, and the strongest ancestor demon god is holding the fort. I have to kill the ancestor demon god to completely destroy the confidence of the demon army and end this war. Although his next goal was to kill the ancestor demon god, he did not have the slightest confidence. The ancestral fiend god was the ancestor of the demon race. 30,000 years ago, the ancestral fiend god had dominated the world and killed countless gods. He was known as the death god. Even though the ancestral fiend god had fallen into a deep slumber for 30,000 years before waking up. Having just been reborn, it was impossible for it to have regained its peak strength. It had only reached the primordial spirit realm not too long ago. However, Ji Tianxing knew that the ancestral demonic god was several times stronger than the demonic emperor. She definitely possessed remarkable abilities and was invincible in this world. He was already lucky to be able to kill the devil emperor, so how could he kill the ancestral fiend god as well? That was a fool's dream, a wild fantasy. No, I have to think of a way to deal with the ancestral demon god. Even if I can't defeat it, I have to restrain it. I definitely can't let it kill its way into Central Continent City. Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows as he pondered with a solemn expression. At this moment, the situation on the battlefield changed again. The armies of the 3 races joined forces to besiege the army of the devil race. However, in the camp of the devil race, a huge combined attack array appeared. The large array with a radius of 30 miles was controlled by 4 blood gods in the soul refinement realm. Hundreds of demon kings led hundreds of thousands of devil race soldiers to provide power for the large array. The battle array was activated and devoured the blood, souls, and demonic clouds in a radius of a few hundred miles. It condensed into hundreds of blood-red demonic eyes that hung high in the sky. Without a doubt, this demonic array was created by the demonic emperor. It had always been used to protect the camp of the devil race. Now, the devil race army had modified this array and used it in the battle between the 2 armies. It had a strong deterrent force. Under the control of the 4 blood gods, The hundreds of blood-red demonic eyes released blood-red light pillars that covered the sky and blasted towards the surrounding armies of the three races. Following a series of loud booms, several huge gaps were blasted open in the formation of the three races. At least 80,000 soldiers of the human race, water race, and demon race were killed by the dozens of blood-red light pillars. Seeing this, the heavenly net demon emperor and the golden dragon emperor were enraged. They rushed towards the devil race's camp with murderous intent, wanting to destroy the demonic array together. However, before they could rush into the demon race's camp, they were blasted away by dozens of light pillars flying towards them. The power of each light pillar was comparable to the attack of an immortal soul realm powerhouse. It was enough to threaten the golden dragon emperor and the heavenly net demon emperor. The two of them were beaten into a sorry state. Their hair was disheveled, and they had suffered minor injuries. The four blood gods controlled the demonic eyes to release crisscrossing light pillars that blasted into the camp of the three races. Boom, boom, boom. The blood-colored pillar of light exploded, bursting forth with destructive power, raising several mountain peaks to the ground. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were killed on the spot. Seeing this, the heavenly net demon emperor and the golden dragon emperor were furious. They waved their swords again and rushed towards the combined array. However, dozens of blood-red light pillars blasted towards them, shattering their swords and sending them flying. The two of them could not get close to the array for the time being. Their hearts were filled with anger and anxiety, but there was nothing they could do. At this moment, Ji Tianxing finally arrived. He used the divine concealment step and remained invisible. He silently rushed into the devil race's army. While the four blood gods were killing the three races, he brazenly launched an attack. Piercing sword. He held the sword of burial of heaven and stabbed at the center of the combined array with all his might. That area was the peak of a mountain. Dozens of demon kings sat cross-legged on the peak, channeling their powers. Without a doubt, that was the core area of the combined array. It was also the foundation of the array. Boom! A cold light exploded in the middle of the crowd, turning into a huge mushroom cloud, rising from the top of the mountain. In the blink of an eye, the dozens of demon kings were blown to smithereens. The entire mountain was flattened, turning into a huge crater. The combined array was broken just like that. The four blood gods and hundreds of thousands of devil race soldiers were shocked and terrified. Ji Tianxing appeared in the open and stood in the sky above the devil race army. He looked down expressionlessly and took out the heavenly dipper godfire cauldron. He channeled his powers and activated the power of the godfire cauldron. Heavenly wind, flowing fire. The godfire cauldron flew into the sky and expanded to the size of a house. It poured out an earth-shattering fire that poured onto the ground like a flood. Instantly, more than 300,000 devil race soldiers were drowned in the sea of fire. They screamed in pain and struggled. The valley and 2 mountains within 100 miles melted in the endless fire, turning into a torrent of lava. More than 300,000 devil race soldiers were also burned to ashes. Not even their bones were left. The surrounding demon race army was scared out of their wits, and they fled in panic. Chapter 1451. Originally, the demons could still stand firm and defend and counterattack in an orderly manner. However, Ji Tianxing appeared and destroyed the combined attack array with lightning speed. He even slaughtered more than 300,000 demon soldiers. The situation of the battle changed immediately. The 2 million demon soldiers fled in fear again. They had no choice. Ji Tianxing had killed the ancient demon emperor and left an indelible shadow and fear in the hearts of the demons. Seeing the demon army fleeing to the north, Ji Tianxing immediately gave chase. The armies of the 3 clans also hurriedly followed, shouting as they charged forward. Soul slash! Ji Tianxing roared as a murderous aura surged from his body. A huge golden sword shadow appeared behind him. It was a giant golden sword that was 10,000 feet tall. It was his essence, soul dharma power. Under the control of his divine telekinesis, the giant golden sword split into thousands of 3-meter-long golden sword rays. Swish, swish, swish. The thousands of golden swords flew out and formed a golden sword net with a radius of 10 miles, according to a specific order and pattern. The sword net enveloped thousands of demon soldiers and emitted a dazzling golden light. The crisscrossing golden swords flew back and forth as fast as lightning, killing those demon soldiers. Swish, swish, swish. In a short while, thousands of demon soldiers were killed by the sword net and scattered on the ruins that were full of holes and cracks. Then, the golden sword net turned into a golden hurricane and swept toward the devil race's camp. Swish, 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 swish. Wherever the golden hurricane swept, the ground cracked and the mountains collapsed, turning into ruins and dust. No matter what realm the devil race soldiers were in, none of them were spared and were directly crushed into dregs. Under Ji Tianxing's control, the golden hurricane rampaged between the mountains and rivers, killing the demon army. In just 20 seconds, more than 100,000 demon soldiers were killed. The demon army was even more terrified. They screamed and roared in fear. Seeing this, the four Blood Gods clones rushed over to attack Ji Tianxing in anger, trying to resolve the crisis of the demon army. More than 20 demon generals also attacked Ji Tianxing from all directions. Ji Tianxing was surrounded, but he was fearless. He brandished the sword of burial of heaven in his hand, slashing out sword lights that blotted out the sky and covered the earth as he fought with the crowd. Hundreds and thousands of golden sword lights were imbued with the power of the purple divine thunder. The golden light blotted out the sky, and the sword chi crisscrossed. Pong, pong, pong. Deafening noises reverberated in the sky. Before long, more than 20 devil race generals were killed clean by Ji Tianxing. The four soul-refining realm blood god sons were also severely injured by the lightning swords and fled in panic. Ji Tianxing chased after them. His figure flickered, and after a few breaths, he killed the four blood gods' illusions. When the devil army saw that their commander and general had been killed, they became even more frightened and ran for their lives. Ji Tianxing led the armies of the three races and chased after them with murderous intent, wantonly slaughtering the devil army. Without a powerhouse at the level of the demon emperor, no one could resist his divine power. At this moment, he was like a peerless god of death. No one could defeat him, and he could cover the sky with one hand. He alone could stop 1 million soldiers and dominate the entire battlefield. Unknowingly, 45 minutes had passed. More than half of the 2 million demon army was slaughtered after fleeing for 300 miles in fear and despair. Only about 600,000 were left, and they fell into deep despair. However, at this moment, the reinforcements of the demon army from the demon army camp finally met up with them. Nearly 4 million demon army rushed to the battlefield and immediately started fighting with the armies of the three races. The momentum of the armies of the three races was blocked, and they were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. The situation of the battle became tense again. However, although the demon army was large in number, there were no essence soul powerhouses overseeing it. Ji Tianxing, the Golden Dragon Emperor, and the Skynet Demon Emperor swept across the entire battlefield in an invincible manner, wantonly slaughtering the demon army. In the Tianxian continent, Essence Soul Supremes were the strongest powerhouses and also the most terrifying combat power. Powerhouses at the level of Ji Tianxing and the Demon Emperor could destroy 1 million elite soldiers by themselves. Both sides started a fierce battle in the lofty mountains and steep ridges, fighting until the sky darkened and the sun and moon lost their light. Demonic chi and blood fog soared into the sky, sealing off the sky within a radius of 1,000 miles. All kinds of colorful magical radiance flickered in the dusky sky. Deafening sounds of collision and battle cries reverberated between heaven and earth, spreading to a radius of 1,000 miles. This tragic and bloody battle lasted for more than 2 hours before it gradually came to an end. The result was indisputable. The demon army was defeated. With Ji Tianxing present, how could the demon army not be defeated when he could slaughter 1,000,000 soldiers by himself? Of the nearly 4 million demon army, more than 3 million had died in battle. Only 800,000 were left, fleeing toward the north in fear and despair. Of the 3 million demon soldiers who died, half were killed by Ji Tianxing, the Golden Dragon Emperor, and the Sky Net Demon Emperor. The demon army was defeated because they did not have essence soul powerhouses overseeing it. The previous scene played out once again. More than half of the 800,000 demon survivors fled toward the demon army camp like stray dogs. The armies of the three races pursued the demon army with high morale, heading straight for the demon army camp. About an hour later, both sides finally arrived at the demon army camp. The mountain range in front of them was shrouded in thick black fog and demon clouds. The mountain peaks and the ground were pitch black and cold. Countless tunnels and demon caves were dug underground, containing a shocking amount of demonic chi of death. Only 200,000 people were lucky enough to escape back to the demon army camp, and all of them were riddled with scars and looked extremely miserable. The armies of the three races were about to charge into the demon army camp and kill all the remaining demon soldiers before attacking and destroying the demon army camp. However, Ji Tianxing, the Golden Dragon Emperor, and the Skynet Demon Emperor sensed a great danger. Their expressions changed immediately, and they ordered the armies to stop. The armies of the three races immediately stopped outside the demon army camp and got into an offensive formation. They looked at the demon army camp vigilantly. All they could see was that the mountains and rivers within a radius of 1,000 miles were filled with black figures, densely packed together like an ocean. They were countless demon soldiers, wearing pitch-black armor and robes, the same color as the mountains and earth. If one did not look carefully, it would be difficult to spot them. Millions of demon soldiers had already gotten into formation at the edge of the demon army camp and were waiting for battle. All of the demon soldiers were fully armed, and their bodies were filled with a strong killing intent. Their eyes were burning with anger and hatred. As long as the demon army commander gave the order, the millions of demon soldiers would explode with their strongest attack and fight to the death with the armies of the three races. Without a doubt, the news of the demon emperor's death and the demon army's defeat had already reached the demon army camp. Chapter 1452. The armies of the three races stared at the demon race's main camp. They were 100 miles away from the demon race's main camp and were in a silent standoff. The eyes of the soldiers on both sides were filled with killing intent that soared to the heavens. The Golden Dragon Emperor and Tianluo Demon Emperor hurriedly flew to Ji Tianxing's side and discussed with him telepathically. Tianxing, the demon race's main camp, must be heavily fortified. The demon race's main camp must be well prepared. Our armies have already been fighting for several hours. Our soldiers are exhausted. If we charge in like this, we will suffer a great loss. There should only be about 5 million soldiers left in the demon race's main camp. Although our armies are exhausted, the soldiers' morale is high. This is the best time to attack. With the three of us here, we should be able to destroy the entire camp. However, the ancestor fiend god has yet to appear. Is he plotting something? The Golden Dragon Emperor and Tianluo Demon Emperor suggested retreating and resting, while the others suggested attacking. However, the final decision still depended on Ji Tianxing's opinion. Since the emperor was not present, Ji Tianxing was the spiritual leader and supreme commander of the human race. Ji Tianxing stood high in the sky and observed for a while. Then he said to the Golden Dragon Emperor and Tianluo Demon Emperor, "The demon race's main camp is indeed heavily fortified. We should not attack rashly. After all, it was not easy for us to kill the demon emperor and defeat the demon race's army of millions. Victory is about to be ushered in. At this critical juncture, we cannot let victory get to our heads. We must be more careful." The Golden Dragon Emperor nodded in agreement. That's right. The demon race has always been cunning and vicious. The demon emperor is dead, and we have already killed our way to the demon race's main camp. But the ancestor fiend god has yet to appear. I think the ancestor fiend god must be up to something. Tianluo, Demon Emperor, saw that the two of them were unwilling to attack. He thought for a while and nodded. It's good to let the soldiers rest for a while. The ancestor fiend god is an ancient fiend god who has slaughtered countless gods. He is terrifyingly powerful. Even if he has just been reborn and his strength has not recovered to its peak, he will still be difficult to deal with. Thus, the three of them ordered the various armies to rest and reorganize. After the order was passed down, the soldiers of the three races began to rest. Many of the injured soldiers also began to bandage and treat their wounds, taking medicinal pills to treat their injuries. What was strange was that the millions of troops in the demon race's camp were still holding their ground, showing no intention of attacking. This made Ji Tianxing and the other two even more certain that the ancestral fiend celestial was definitely plotting something. While the soldiers were resting, the three of them spread out and carefully observed the situation in the demon camp. Ji Tianxing used the divine concealment step and stepped into the demon clan's camp in an invisible state. Shuttling through the demonic clouds and mist, he released his divine sense to cover a radius of 400 miles to check the situation underground. Through observation, he found that there were not many abyss devils left in the underground tunnels and nests. The vast majority of the demon race soldiers had gathered on the ground, preparing for battle. An hour later, he entered the depths of the devil race's camp and was attacked by the defensive formation. Hundreds of blood-red eyeballs lurked in the demonic clouds high in the sky, releasing all kinds of magic attacks like a rain of arrows. All of a sudden, the sky was illuminated by the blood-red light that covered the sky for hundreds of kilometers. Ji Tianxing hurriedly closed his golden wings to protect himself. Bam, 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 bam. A series of loud explosions erupted, and he was sent flying, revealing his figure. Although the golden wings had blocked all the attacks, he was not injured, but his whereabouts were exposed, and he was immediately attacked by countless abyss devils. At the foot of a nearby mountain, there were more than 300,000 abyss devils in a defensive formation. More than 100,000 of them joined forces to form a battle formation, releasing powerful blood-red light, soul fire, and all kinds of secret techniques to attack him. There were more than a dozen heaven-origin realm abyss devils who joined forces to use secret techniques of the devil, Dao, to attack him. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he immediately released a powerful killer move to start the massacre. Star-shattering fist. He swung his fists, and two huge golden fist shadows slammed into the mountain below. Boom, boom. Only to hear two earth-shattering explosions. The mountain collapsed on the spot, turning into endless dust, rising into the sky and covering the sun. The area within a radius of dozens of miles was blasted into a huge crater by the fist shadows, like an abyss. The destructive power killed more than 100,000 abyss devils on the spot, and the abyss devil's attack was shattered by the two fist shadows, instantly dissolving. Ji Tianxing took out the sword of burial of heaven again and charged toward the dozen abyss devils, slashing out a sword light that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. After a series of fierce clashes, he killed all the dozen abyss devils like a gust of wind sweeping away fallen leaves. Following that, he used all kinds of secret techniques to slaughter the remaining 100,000 abyss devils. This was an unfair battle. The abyss devils had more than 300,000 people, but Ji Tianxing faced them alone. But the final result was exactly the opposite. The abyss devils could not do anything to Ji Tianxing at all, and could not hurt him at all. But he killed more than 300,000 abyss devils in a short span of 100 breaths. Such a terrifying aura caused the surrounding demon race army to tremble in fear and alarm. And this was under the condition that the abyss devils were constantly attacking him, forcing him to divert his attention to block the attacks of the abyss devils. If not for the hundreds of abyss devils, he would only need a dozen breaths at most to kill all 300,000 abyss devils. At the same time, the commotion caused by Ji Tianxing and the abyss devils battle alarmed both sides. The three armies stopped resting and under the leadership of the Golden Dragon Emperor and the Sky Net Demon Emperor, they charged into the Abyss Devils' encampment like a gust of wind. Millions of Abyss Devils immediately went out to meet the enemy, blocking the three armies' attack. In a short while, the two armies met, and an intense battle unfolded in the Abyss Devils' encampment. The final battle that would decide the outcome of the battle thus began. And Ji Tianxing was the fuse that ignited the flames of war. The two armies fought in the mountains and on the ground, and their shouts shook the heavens. Blood flowed like rivers, and corpses piled up like mountains. Ji Tianxing, the Golden Dragon Emperor, and the Sky Net Demon Emperor stood proudly in the sky, unleashing all kinds of secret techniques to kill the Abyss Devils below. At the same time, the three of them worked together to block the attacks of the hundreds of Abyss Devils, protecting the three armies. After an hour, the Abyss Devils' numbers were sharply reduced, and they could no longer resist the attacks, retreating into the depths of the encampment. At this moment, a muffled rumbling sound came from the depths of the Abyss Devils' encampment. That kind of sound and movement was like rolling thunder exploding in the ground. The earth in a radius of a few hundred miles shook violently. More than 10,000 feet tall mountains collapsed one after another, turning into ruins. Chapter 1453. Ji Tianxing did not need to guess to know that the ancestral Fiend Celestial was the only one who could cause such a huge commotion. He looked into the depths of the demon's camp and muttered with a grave expression, "Is the ancestral Fiend Celestial finally coming out?" He had understood the situation after coming out of seclusion. The ancestral Fiend Celestial had already been reborn when the Heaven Dragon Pass was breached. That was 2 months ago when the ancestral Fiend Celestial had already condensed his Dharma body. However, the ancestral Fiend Celestial had not appeared in the past 2 months. Even when the demonic emperor led his army to attack the Middle State City, the ancestral Fiend Celestial remained in the demon's camp and did not make a move. Ji Tianxing guessed that the ancestral Fiend Celestial had not made a move because he was recuperating in the demon's camp and quickly recovering his strength. After all, when the ancestral Fiend Celestial was reborn, he was only at the first or second tier of the primordial soul realm. This bit of strength was not even comparable to the demonic emperor and could not lead the entire demons, much less be the ancestral Fiend Celestial. Most importantly, such strength was not enough to defeat the armies of the three races and unify the entire Tianxian continent. Therefore, the ancestral Fiend Celestial must have used some secret technique or divine ability to quickly recover his strength. Just as these thoughts flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind, a certain mountain in the depths of the demon race's camp exploded with a boom. The entire mountain collapsed and shattered, turning into an endless amount of gravel and dust that splashed out in all directions. A huge dark purple pillar of light rushed out from the depths of the ground, piercing through the dust and flying high into the sky. Ji Tianxing subconsciously raised his head to look. He saw a pitch-black mountain peak towering in the sky, thousands of feet high. No, that was not a mountain, but a pitch-black Fiend Celestial. It had a body thousands of feet tall and was as majestic as a mountain. It had 3 heads, 6 arms, and 8 black wings. A layer of hazy purple light enveloped its body, emitting a mysterious and powerful energy. Its 6 huge purple eyes looked down at the land thousands of miles below, revealing a cold and emotionless gaze. In its eyes, the 4 million devil warriors and over 3 million human warriors, spirit beasts, and aquatic warriors were all like ants. Roar! It opened its mouth full of fangs and let out an earth-shattering roar. Instantly, the land within a few hundred miles started to tremble. The terrifying sound waves caused the surrounding mountains to collapse one after another, shattering them into ruins all over the ground. An invisible energy that covered the sky and covered the land to suppress the land within a few hundred miles. The soldiers of the Devil Clan and the 3 clans in this area were immediately suppressed and filled with fear, revealing an incomparably terrified expression. Even Ji Tianxing, the Golden Dragon Emperor, and the heavenly net demon emperor were shocked, and their expressions turned grave. What a terrifying pressure! This power has already surpassed the demonic emperor, the ancestral fiend celestial. Just as the three of them were filled with shock and amazement, the 4 million demon soldiers retreated like the tide and rushed towards the ancestral fiend celestial. Ji Tianxing, the golden dragon emperor, and the other two were considering whether to let the three armies chase after them. At this moment, a scene that surprised and shocked everyone appeared. Millions of demon soldiers rushed to the ancestral fiend celestial's surroundings and knelt down to worship it. Then, all of them knelt on the ground and closed their eyes, chanting the incantation of the demon race with a devout expression. They even relaxed their bodies and opened their arms. The posture of the demon soldiers looked like they were worshiping the ancestral fiend celestial, but it also looked like they were performing some kind of ritual. However, after careful observation, Ji Tianxing found a suspicious point. The 4 million demon soldiers did not show any fanatical expressions of worship. Their expressions and voices were heavy and solemn, and they also contained a strong sense of solemnity and solemnity. What were these demon soldiers doing? Ji Tianxing frowned in confusion, feeling more and more puzzled. The Golden Dragon Emperor and the Sky Net Demon Emperor also stared at the actions of the demon army and secretly communicated with each other. At this moment, the ancestral fiend celestial in the sky slowly opened its 6 huge arms and the 8 wide wings on its back. Its entire body lit up with a rich purple light, bursting forth with an incomparably strong and evil power. On the ground below, the demon soldiers that were closer to it were instantly ignited with blood-red flames. In a short while, the bodies of those demon soldiers were turned into ashes in the blood-red flames, condensing into balls of blood-red light. At least 300,000 demon soldiers were burned to death by the blood-red flames, turning into black ashes that scattered on the ground. The blood-red balls of light that blotted out the sky flew into the sky and entered the ancestral fiend celestial's body like a blood-red tide. Following that, batch after batch of devil soldiers ignited with blood-red flames, and their bodies turned into ashes. The dark red flames lit up the gloomy sky, covering a few hundred miles in a blood-red color. As the blood-red flames continued to spread outwards, more and more demon soldiers died. The blood-red balls of light in the sky also became denser, converging into a blood-red current that blotted out the sky, drilling into the ancestral fiend celestial's body. The ancestral fiend celestial swallowed countless blood-red balls of light, and the purple light that enveloped its body became even more intense, gradually turning black. Its aura became even more evil and mysterious, and its power also increased rapidly. Not far away, a vanguard of the human army that was closer to it had more than 30,000 people. They did not have time to dodge or retreat, and their bodies started to burn, emitting blood-red flames. In a few breaths' time, more than 30,000 human soldiers were burned to ashes. Their blood, chi, essence, and power gathered into balls of blood-red light that flew towards the ancestral fiend celestial. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing and the Golden Dragon Emperor's expressions changed drastically as they understood the ancestral fiend celestial's intentions. Understand now, the 4 million demon soldiers are sacrificing their lives to increase the ancestral fiend celestial's power. Heavens, this is a sacrifice. The 4 million demon soldiers are using an evil sacrificial ceremony to offer their lives and power to the Grim Reaper. If I remember correctly, this is probably the ancestral god sacrificial ceremony from ancient myths and legends. Hearing the Golden Dragon Emperor's exclamation, Ji Tianxing and the Heavenly Demon Emperor turned to look at him and asked, "What is the ancestral god sacrificial ceremony?" The Golden Dragon Emperor's expression was gloomy, and he said in a grave tone, "The ancestral god sacrificial ceremony is an ancient sacrificial ceremony from ancient myths and legends. Some races that rely on their bloodline to pass down their power, and their ancestors or leaders can use this ancient sacrificial ceremony to devour the power of their descendants and rapidly increase their strength. The ancestral fiend celestial is the ancestor of all demons, and the 4 million demon soldiers are its bloodline descendants. In a sense, the lives of the demon soldiers were given by the ancestral fiend celestial. Chapter 1454. After hearing the Golden Dragon Emperor's explanation, Ji Tianxing and the Heavenly Net Demon Emperor's expressions changed. Without a doubt, the ancestral god sacrificial ritual that originated from ancient times was a powerful and evil ritual. The Heavenly Net Demon Emperor frowned and asked the Golden Dragon Emperor, "Dragon Emperor, I have never heard of the ancestral god sacrificial ritual. How do you know so much about it?" The Golden Dragon Emperor glanced at him and said solemnly, "Don't forget that the Dragon Clan of the East Sea also relies on bloodline power and divine abilities. In ancient times, the ancestors of the Dragon Clan also used this ritual during the War of the Gods." The Heavenly Net Demon Emperor was enlightened and nodded. "I see." Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a moment. He asked with some doubt, "Dragon Emperor, you said that this ancestral god sacrificial ritual devours the power of all its descendants. It's normal for the ancestral fiend god to devour the power of the demon army. But those 30,000 soldiers have no bloodline connection with the ancestral fiend god. Why were they devoured by the ancestral fiend god?" The Golden Dragon Emperor was also stunned by this question. He frowned and thought for a moment before shaking his head. "I'm not sure about this either. After all, the ancestral fiend god is an ancient fiend god and an extremely powerful existence. Perhaps it has a different understanding of the ancestral god sacrificial ritual and can unleash a greater power." While the three of them were discussing this question, the ancestral god sacrificial ritual continued. More and more demon soldiers' bodies and souls were burning, emitting blood-red flames. Endless blood-red balls of light flew into the sky and poured into the ancestral fiend god's body. The ancestral fiend god's power grew stronger and stronger. The invisible power it released also began to spread outwards. The nearby soldiers had no idea what was going on. Their bodies were burning with blood-red flames, and they were quickly devoured by the ancestral fiend god. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing and the Golden Dragon Emperor hurriedly ordered the three armies to quickly retreat from the demon camp and hide as far away as possible. Many of the soldiers were shocked by this strange scene. Their hearts were filled with doubt and fear. Hearing the orders of Ji Tianxing and the other two, all the officers and soldiers retreated without hesitation, fleeing out of the devil camp as fast as they could. Not long after, the soldiers of the three clans fled to a safe area. For the time being, their lives would not be in danger. The ancestral demon god had also devoured more than 1 million demons of the devil race's army. Its strength had already increased by 3 times, and it was still increasing. Upon seeing this, Ji Tianxing frowned and said with a solemn expression, "Once the ancestral fiend celestial completes the ancestral god ritual and devours the 4 million strong fiend army, its strength will definitely reach the peak of the essence soul realm. It might even break through to the 9th tribulation realm. By that time, no one in the entire Tianxian land will be able to resist it. We will all lose without a doubt." Golden Dragon Emperor shook his head and said firmly, "Tianxing, even if the ancestral fiend celestial completes the ancestral god ritual, she can only reach the limits of the essence soul realm at most. It's impossible for her to break through to the 9th tribulation realm. Once she reaches the 9th tribulation realm, she will immediately attract the first heavenly tribulation. This is very dangerous for her. It's very likely that she will lose her life during the heavenly tribulation." Heavenly Net Demon Emperor added, "Even if she can't reach the 9th tribulation realm, she will be invincible on the continent once her strength recovers to the 9th firmament essence soul realm. Even if the 3 of us join forces, we won't be her match. The armies of the 3 clans will also be slaughtered by her. The entire continent will fall." Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a solemn expression, "We have to stop her. We can't let her complete the ancestral god ritual." With that said, he turned and flew toward the ancestral fiend celestial. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed with all his might. Heaven's splitting sword. The 10,000-foot-long golden sword contained surging Zi-Jian lightning as it slammed toward the ancestral fiend celestial. The ancestral fiend celestial's 6 eyes were still tightly shut as she spread her 6 arms and 8 wings. She greedily devoured the sanguine light that filled the sky, as though she didn't notice Ji Tianxing's attack at all. Only when the golden sword was in front of her and was about to strike her did she suddenly stretch out her 2 arms and grab the golden sword with her cold, dark palms. The golden sword's might could be said to be apocalyptic, but it was unable to break free from the ancestral fiend celestial's grip. The ancestral fiend celestial's palms shook forcefully, causing the 10,000-foot-long sword to shatter with a series of cracking sounds. Ji Tianxing's all-out attack was easily resolved by the ancestral fiend celestial. This scene shocked Ji Tianxing, Golden Dragon Emperor, and Heavenly Net Demon Emperor. Their expressions turned even more solemn. Ji Tianxing was filled with indignation. He used all his strength and used an ultimate mystic technique. 7 Stars Sword. He brandished the sword of burial of heaven with all his might and stabbed out 7 sword beams at the ancestral fiend celestial's 3 heads. However, the ancestral fiend celestial stood tall in the sky and had no intention of dodging. When the 7 sword beams were about to hit its heads, it used a dazzling, dark purple light to condense into a wide barrier in front of it. Bam, bam, bam. The 7 sword beams pierced the purple barrier, causing a series of loud noises. The purple light barrier was unscathed, but the 7 sword lights exploded with a bang, splashing in all directions. Ji Tianxing's ultimate mystic technique was easily resolved by the ancestral fiend celestial again. Even if he used all his strength and unleashed his strongest attack, he could not do anything to the ancestral fiend celestial. The difference in strength between the two was too great. Golden Dragon Emperor and Heavenly Net Demon Emperor originally wanted to assist Ji Tianxing and attack the ancestral fiend celestial together. Seeing this scene, the two of them immediately changed their minds. The two of them brandished their divine swords and slashed out sword beams at the demon army on the ground below. This method was not bad. If they could kill a large number of demon army soldiers, they could disrupt the ancestral god ritual and weaken the ancestral fiend celestial's power. However, when the sword beams were about to hit the demon army, they were blocked by a layer of invisible force. That was the ancestral fiend celestial's power. It condensed into a defensive layer that protected a radius of 300 miles. Bam, bam, bam. Amidst a series of loud noises, the sword light that filled the sky also shattered with a bang, turning into fragments that scattered everywhere. The two of them were unwilling to give up and repeatedly used a few more ultimate mystic techniques to attack the many demon army soldiers. However, the result was the same. Their attacks were all blocked by the invisible defensive layer, and they could not hurt the demon army at all. The three of them were filled with helplessness, and a trace of despair grew in their hearts. Golden Dragon Emperor and Heavenly Net Demon Emperor hurriedly flew to Ji Tianxing's side and discussed anxiously. The ancestral fiend celestial is too powerful. We can't do anything to it at all. If we can't do anything to it now, when it completes the ancestral god ritual and becomes several times stronger, the consequences will be unimaginable. Tianxing, you have a better understanding of the demon race and killed the ancient demon emperor with your own hands. Do you have any way to deal with the ancestral fiend celestial? Ji Tianxing looked at the ancestral fiend celestial gloomily. After frowning for a while, he said in a low voice, "The ancestral fiend celestial's power is beyond our imagination. With the strength of the three of us, we can't hurt it at all." Chapter 1455. Hearing Ji Tianxing's suggestion, the Golden Dragon Emperor and Tianluo Demon Emperor nodded in agreement. That's right, this concerns the fate of the entire continent. We must unite and fight the ancestral demon god together. Tianxing, of course we've thought of this idea. But the key question is, what formation should we use to deal with it? Tianxing thought for a moment, then said in a serious tone, a normal formation won't do. We must use a formation above the primordial spirit level, and it must be powerful enough. The heavenly net demon emperor and the golden dragon emperor fell silent as they racked their brains to think of a suitable formation. Both of them were supreme powerhouses who had cultivated for over 1,000 years and had mastered countless mysterious formations. However, the two of them pondered for a long time and did not think of a suitable great formation. Tianxing frowned and thought for a moment. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. He hurriedly said to the Golden Dragon Emperor and Tianluo Demon Emperor, "You two take charge of the situation first. Give me some time, maybe I'll have an idea." Their eyes immediately lit up, revealing a hopeful look. "That's great. I knew you'd think of something. Tianxing, don't worry. We'll wait for your good news." Tianxing nodded to the two of them, then turned and left. He left the demon camp as fast as a flash of light and flew 300 miles away, then burrowed into the depths of the ground. Then he dug a temporary stone room underground and sat cross-legged on the ground. His primordial spirit entered Kenshin's tomb. Swoosh! The primordial spirit's sword turned into a small golden figure, which looked exactly like him, and appeared in Kenshin's tomb. He stood in the cold and dark wasteland, with 18 pitch-black tombstones not far in front of him. However, his goal in entering Kenshin's tomb this time wasn't the tombstones. He flew across the sky at lightning speed towards the edge of the Kenshin's tomb. 100 miles away, there was an endless gray fog, hiding countless secrets. In the vast gray fog, there was a blank area with a radius of a few dozen miles. The empty ground was carved with ancient patterns and lines. It was a corner of the ancient divine array. Without a doubt, the method he thought of was the mysterious array hidden in Kenshin's tomb. When he had practiced the 9 swords of the burial of heaven, he had tested the power of his swordsmanship here. That empty space was created by him using his sword technique. He walked to the edge of the fog and stopped. He condensed a golden sword with his boundless magic power and held it tightly in his right hand. Then he quickly gathered his strength and swung the golden sword with all his might, slashing at the fog in front of him. Heaven-cleaving sword. The 10,000-meter-long golden sword light viciously slashed into the gray mist with unparalleled power. Boom! Following a dull explosion, the gray mist within a radius of 15 kilometers was cleaved apart by the sword light. A violent hurricane was born. Sword chi crisscrossed the area within 30 miles, creating a chaotic scene. The gray fog surged wildly and spread in all directions. In the blink of an eye, another 15 kilometers of empty space appeared in the foggy area. The gray ground was also covered with mysterious array diagrams. However, Tianxing did not stop. He swung the golden sword with all his might, slashing out 7 dazzling sword lights. 7 stars sword. 7 streaks of incomparably violent sword light pierced fiercely into the gray mist. Boom, 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 boom. A series of earth-shattering explosions reverberated between heaven and earth for a long time. The foggy area within a radius of 25 kilometers suddenly became chaotic. Destructive sword chi and shockwaves spread out in all directions, sweeping away a large amount of gray fog. A moment later, the hurricane and energy dissipated. A blank area within a radius of 25 kilometers appeared in the fog, revealing countless array patterns and lines. In this way, the blank area in front of Tianxing had reached a radius of 150 kilometers. He flew above the blank area and looked down at the ground from above, carefully observing the array patterns and lines. Now that he had reached the primordial soul realm, he had inherited the lifetime skills of the palace master, Emperor Yi, and the others, as well as most of their martial arts experience. His array attainments and understanding were almost catching up to the palace master. Through observation and comparison, He was very sure that the ancient and mysterious array beneath his feet was a divine array from the primordial age. This was a true divine array, a super array that only gods could create and set up. This is a true divine level great array, which can deal with divine level experts. If I can use this array, I have a chance to defeat or kill the ancestor fiend celestial. However, this was just a thought. He did not hold much hope. After all, with his strength and array attainments, it was impossible for him to use this divine array. He had not seen the complete divine array, let alone comprehend and master it. He focused on observing the array. Based on his array attainments and understanding, he carefully analyzed and figured out the direction, distribution, and purpose of each line and pattern. Time passed quietly, and an hour passed very quickly. Ji Tianxing carefully observed and figured out the array within a 150-kilometer radius. Finally, he gained something. First of all, he could confirm that the array within this 150-kilometer radius was only the tip of the iceberg of the entire divine array. The area of the entire divine array was at least 10 times larger than this blank area. It was at least 2,500 kilometers wide. In the mortal world, such a huge array could almost cover the territory of a kingdom. Secondly, Ji Tianxing concluded that this divine array should be a divine sword array. As for what this sword array had to do with Kenshin, he did not know. Most importantly, he discovered something shocking. He could not see the complete sword array and could only see a very small corner. However, the array in this small corner also had a complete array base, nodes, veins, core, and so on. In other words, the array within a 150-kilometer radius could also be set up and used independently. This discovery made Ji Tianxing excited. A strong sense of hope welled up in his heart. As expected of a divine array, any corner and part can be used independently. This is simply unbelievable. Although he could not comprehend the entire sword array, he could comprehend and learn a corner of the sword array. Even if he couldn't comprehend the essence of the sword array and could only grasp the surface of the sword array, he would still be able to unleash a power that was greater than that of a primordial spirit level array. This was already enough. Filled with excitement and anticipation, he used his highly retentive memory to completely memorize the sword formation within a radius of 150 kilometers. Then, his essence soul left Kenshin's tomb and returned to his main body. Swoosh! He left the underground stone room and flew across the sky at lightning speed, rushing towards the demon race's camp. Chapter 1456. When Ji Tianxing arrived near the demon race's camp, he saw that the scene had changed. In the depths of the demon race's camp, the ancestral god ritual was still ongoing. The ancestor demon god was still standing high in the sky, and its body had grown a little, reaching a height of 13,000 feet. Its body was even larger and majestic, and the rich purple light that shone from its body had already turned black. The rich black light condensed into a huge shield, protecting its entire body. It exuded a powerful aura that covered a radius of 250 miles, suppressing everything like a lofty mountain. On the ground below, most of the demon race's army had disappeared, turning into black ashes that scattered on the ground. The remaining 400,000 soldiers would all be burned into bloodlight in 15 minutes, completing the ritual. When the ancestral god ritual was over, the ancestor demon god's power would reach the peak of the primordial soul realm, and it would start a massacre. By then, even without the help of the demon race's soldiers, it could kill millions of human soldiers and commanders by itself and destroy the entire Zhongzhou city. It would dominate the entire Tianxian continent and be invincible. Ji Tianxing's expression turned grave, and his heart was filled with worry. He quickly flew to the sky above the human army and found the Golden Dragon Emperor and the Sky Net Demon Emperor. Apart from the two of them, there was another supreme being who was discussing something with the two of them in a low voice. Ji Tianxing took a closer look and saw that it was the Emperor. The Emperor had already treated his injuries and changed into a golden robe, wearing a white jade crown and holding the Emperor's sword in his hand. However, His face was still pale, and he had only recovered about 60 to 70% of his power. After all, his injuries were too severe, and it would take decades or even centuries for him to fully recover. However, he was worried about the situation on the battlefield, so he simply treated his injuries, took some elixirs to recover some of his power, and quickly rushed to the battlefield. When Ji Tianxing arrived, the Golden Dragon Emperor and the Skynet Demon Emperor had already informed the Emperor of the situation. When the three of them saw Ji Tianxing return, they turned to look at him with hopeful expressions. "Tianxing, how's the situation? Have you found a way to deal with the ancestor demon god? Tianxing, what kind of formation are you going to set up?" Ji Tianxing said solemnly, "I have a very powerful god formation that can gather the four of us and the three races' armies to fight against the ancestral devil god. But we have to finish setting up this sword array before the ancestral god ritual is completed. Otherwise, when the ancestral fiend celestial starts his attack, he will definitely massacre the armies of the three clans, and no one will be able to stop him." The Celestial Demon Emperor, Golden Dragon Emperor, and Celestial Demon Emperor looked at the ancestral demon god and the hundreds of thousands of demon soldiers not far away and quickly nodded. "All right, let's begin. Tianxing, you take charge of this formation. We will coordinate with you to mobilize the army." Ji Tianxing didn't waste any time and immediately said to the three of them, "This sword formation has to cover an area of at least 500 miles to unleash its strongest power. Furthermore, it won't be easily destroyed by the ancestral devil god." There were 36 main meridians in the formation, which were formed by the combination of the 3 branches and the 12 Dao palaces. When the time comes, I will occupy the Chinquin position and control the entire sword formation. The 3 of you will occupy the heaven, earth, and man positions respectively and be responsible for the operation of the formation. In addition, we also need 12 spirit refinement realm experts to form the 12 Dao palaces and assist us in operating the formation. There are a total of 108 array cores, and 108 experts must be present to maintain the normal operation of the formation. He used the most concise words to quickly introduce the basic structure of the sword formation. The Celestial Demon Emperor, Golden Dragon Emperor, and Celestial Demon Emperor were all Supreme Being experts and naturally understood what he meant. Thus, everyone immediately started to move. The 3 Supreme Beings mobilized their armies and spread out in all directions, forming the embryonic form of the formation. When the armies of the 3 races found out that everyone had to work together to form the formation to deal with the ancestral devil god, they were filled with excitement and anticipation. In just half an hour, the 3 million-strong army was spread out over a 500-mile radius and formed a huge circle. Within the circle, the soldiers of the 3 races were arranged in layers and stood according to the formation's meridians. Ji Tianxing was at the center of the circle, standing at the core of the formation. He constantly waved his palms to create golden light that filled the sky and quickly set up the formation. The Emperor, Golden Dragon Emperor, and Heavenly Net Demon Emperor occupied the heaven, earth, and man positions respectively and surrounded Ji Tianxing. The Imperial Tutor, Yin Zhongqi, and a few other commanders of the demon race and the water race, a total of 12 spirit refinement realm experts, were arranged according to a special pattern and position, surrounding the Emperor and the 2 Supreme Beings. Further out were the 108 Sky Origin Realm experts of the 3 races, forming the 108 array bases of the formation. Further out were the 3 million-strong army, scattered into tens of thousands of array nodes. At each node, there were more than 300 soldiers. They worked together to cast spells and provide energy for the formation. As time passed, an hour passed very quickly. In such a short time, the armies of the 3 races had completed their task and set up a sword formation with a 500-mile radius. This was simply an unbelievable miracle. At the same time, this was the result of all the soldiers working together and cooperating sincerely. The moment the formation was set up, everyone was filled with excitement and excitement. Their hearts were filled with anticipation and pride. At this moment, the soldiers of the 3 races were united. There were no barriers or grudges between them. Everyone was united and worked hard for the same goal. Even if it meant sacrificing their lives, they would not hesitate. Swoosh! The moment the ancient sword formation was activated, everyone's body lit up with seven-colored spiritual light. It formed tens of thousands of balls of light and lines that intertwined in the sky. A seven-colored light barrier that covered a 500-mile radius was like a huge canopy that sealed off half of the demon race's camp. The resplendent rainbow-colored flowing light illuminated the entire area in a dazzling manner. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth within a 5,000-mile radius was attracted by the formation and turned into a seven-colored torrent of spiritual chi that gathered towards the center of the formation. An incomparably vast divine power was born from the formation and enveloped a 500-mile radius. Without a doubt, the ancestor fiend celestial was also enveloped by the seven-colored canopy and sealed in the ancient sword formation. The ancestor god ritual had already been completed. All the demon soldiers had died and turned into black ash that scattered on the ground. The ancestor fiend celestial closed his eyes and silently refined for a long time before ending the ancestor god ritual. Swoosh! He suddenly opened his 6 huge eyes. The dark purple pupils and the blood-red eyeballs released dazzling purple light pillars. Bam, 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 bam. The 6 purple light pillars that were thousands of feet long and had terrifying power slammed into the seven-colored canopy, creating a deafening explosion. The rainbow-colored canopy immediately shook, creating layers of ripples. However, the seven-colored canopy was unbreakable. There were no cracks or holes in it. Only then did the ancestor fiend celestial realize that the power of this formation was not as weak as he had imagined. He was enraged. His body lit up with bloody flames, and he roared like thunder. Chapter 1457. The ancestor fiend celestial's deep voice reverberated in the sky. His body lit up with a dazzling purple light as he emitted an extremely powerful aura that spread in all directions. An invisible, violent shockwave swept through a radius of a few hundred miles as it struck the soldiers of the 3 races. If not for the protection of the ancient sword array, at least half of the 3 million soldiers would have died from the shockwave. However, the massive rainbow-colored canopy blocked the invisible shockwave. Only a few thousand people died from the shockwave. Tens of thousands vomited blood from the shockwave. Most people were unharmed. At the same time, the ancient sword array began to circulate. Boundless energy flowed through the array's veins and gathered towards the center of the array. In the end, the raging energy surged into Ji Tianqing's body. He was the core of the array, so he had to gather the entire array's energy to deal with the ancestor fiend celestial. Swoosh! His body lit up with a rainbow-colored brilliance as his body was filled with terrifying energy as it expanded rapidly. In a few seconds, he went from a 7-foot-tall human youth to a 1,000-foot-tall giant. His muscles bulged as his body became abnormally muscular. He was like a primordial beast that possessed the power to destroy the world. However, this was not the end. As the ancient sword array continued to circulate, everyone's energy continued to gather. His body was still expanding, gradually growing to 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet, 4,000 feet. 30 seconds later, when his body finally stabilized, he was already 5,000 feet tall. He was like a 1,000-meter-tall mountain. His strength was also rapidly increasing. He was now comparable to a peak 9th firmament essence soul realm expert. A power that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth surged through his body, causing his flesh, blood, and meridians to vibrate continuously, and his bones to let out crisp cracking sounds. He felt like his body was about to explode. Every inch of his flesh and blood emitted an unbearable piercing pain and tearing sensation. The indescribable excruciating pain caused his face to contort as he let out a low growl. He only wanted to expel the violent energy from his body as quickly as possible to reduce the pain his body and essence soul suffered. Of course, this was under the condition that the array continued to circulate. That was why he was in such a state and possessed such powerful strength. Once the array stopped circulating, he would rapidly recover to his original state. He was only using the formation to gather everyone's power. He couldn't directly raise his cultivation base. Previously, compared to the ancestor fiend god, he was as insignificant as a fly. But now, he was already 30% of the ancestral fiend god size, enough to contend with the ancestral fiend god. The ancestral fiend celestial attacked a few times, but he was unable to kill the armies of the three races, nor was he able to destroy the rainbow sky curtain. It realized that if it wanted to slaughter the armies of the three races, it had to destroy this formation. The core of this formation was Ji Tianxing, the Emperor, the Golden Dragon Emperor, and the Heavenly Demon Emperor. Only by killing the four of them could the formation be completely destroyed. The ancestor Archdevil God looked down at Ji Tianxing from above and said in a cold and gloomy tone, "Little worm, I didn't expect you to have some ability to actually be able to set up such an extraordinary formation. However, everything you've done is in vain. Back in the day, 18 deities from various races led an army of millions and formed the heaven-defying demon-slaughtering formation, but they still failed to kill me. Do you think you can trap me with this formation and 3 million ants? You're too naive." The ancestral fiend Celestial sneered and extended 4 huge arms. Palm shadows filled the sky as they slammed down on Ji Tianxing. Die! A total of 81 purple palm shadows, each as huge as a mountain, descended from the sky towards Ji Tianxing with the power to destroy everything. In an instant, the area within 100 miles was shrouded in purple light. Ji Tianxing, the emperor, and the rest were also drowned out. Ji Tianxing was groaning in pain. When he saw the palm shadows slamming down on him, he used all his strength to swing his fists and attack. Star-shattering fist. He finally attacked, and the raging power in his body was finally released. 2 mountain-like rainbow-colored fist projections exploded with terrifying power and collided head-on with the palm projections in the sky. Only a series of dull bangs could be heard. They exploded continuously and reverberated through the sky. The rainbow fist radiance and the purple palm shadows both collapsed and turned into fragments that covered the sky. They were swept up by the shock waves and scattered in all directions. Rumble! Within a radius of 200 miles, more than 10 mountains were shattered by the shock waves and collapsed into ruins. Tens of thousands of soldiers were also affected and turned into dust on the spot. They lost their lives. However, these casualties were negligible to the armies of the three races. Everyone used all their strength to activate the ancient sword formation to increase Ji Tianxing's strength. Ji Tianxing's body swelled up again, and he felt a heart-wrenching pain all over his body. He started to convulse. The ancestral fiend Celestial frowned, and his 6 huge eyes shone with a fierce light. He said coldly, "Little worm, you do have some skills. No wonder you could kill ancient Nether." Clearly, the ancestral fiend Celestial had tested Ji Tianxing's combat strength and knew that he was qualified to fight against him. He had stopped underestimating him and was going to treat him seriously. "Cruel son, evil blade!" The ancestral fiend Celestial roared and waved his 6 arms. Using his huge palms as blades, he swung them at Ji Tianxing. 6 purple light blades that were thousands of feet long arrived at Ji Tianxing's head with the power to destroy everything. Ji Tianxing did not show any weakness. He channeled his boundless power into the Burial of Heaven's sword, causing the Burial of Heaven's sword to swell up and become a 4,000 feet long black sword. He held the huge Burial of Heaven's sword with both hands and swung it with all his strength. Cold Sea. As he swung his sword, the Burial of Heaven's sword released a crescent-shaped sword light that was thousands of feet wide and swept towards the ancestral fiend Celestial. Bang! 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 A series of deafening noises erupted and reverberated through the sky, shaking the universe. The 6 purple light blades were shattered on the spot and scattered in all directions. The crescent-shaped sword light that was thousands of feet wide did not lose its power, and struck the ancestral fiend celestial again. Kaboom! Amidst the earth-shattering noises, the crescent-shaped sword light collapsed on the spot and turned into fragments that scattered all over the sky. The ancestral fiend celestial was also pushed back 10 miles by the sword light. His body shook violently and flashed violently with purple light. However, his huge and sturdy body was made up of 4 divine items, and his defense was extremely strong. Ji Tianxing's sword technique could not hurt him at all. The ancestral fiend celestial stared coldly at Ji Tianxing. His middle head shook, and a mocking sneer appeared on his hideous face. Interesting. I have heard from ancient Serene that you are his #1 enemy, and also the most outstanding demon of the human race. You have had a fortuitous encounter. Now, it seems that this is indeed the case. Chapter 1458. Previously, the ancestral fiend celestial did not take Ji Tianxing seriously at all. In its eyes, Ji Tianxing was just an ant. At best, he was only one of the stronger ones among the many ants that could be casually squashed to death. But now, after exchanging a few blows with Ji Tianxing, it realized that Ji Tianxing was special and extraordinary. He was indeed one of a kind on this mainland. Even in the Antiquity Age, when it was at its peak, Ji Tianxing was also a rare genius. Therefore, it was interested in Ji Tianxing and wanted to kill him with all its might and devour his magic power and primordial spirit. Azura, sky-destroying slash. The ancestral fiend celestial roared and suddenly spread open the 8 wings on its back. It swept up an earth-shattering black wind and swept towards Ji Tianxing. That endless black wind condensed into 99 giant black light blades that were thousands of feet long. They spun rapidly and wanted to kill Ji Tianxing. The giant black light blades had already locked onto his primordial spirit. Even if he teleported hundreds of miles away, the black light blades would still chase after him and envelop him. At this critical moment, he did not hesitate to close his golden wings and protect himself. Bam, 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 bam. The 99 giant black light blades slashed the golden wings one after another, producing earth-shattering sounds. Ji Tianxing was instantly sent flying. His golden wings trembled violently and flashed with golden light. Before he could stabilize his body, the ancestral fiend celestial waved its 6 arms and opened its 3 bloody mouths, letting out a powerful roar. Great sun fire! Golden light surged out of its body, and a huge golden sun appeared above its head. Boundless golden true fire poured out from the blazing golden sun. It was like a torrential flood as it poured down majestically. Suddenly, the temperature within the 7-colored light barrier rose rapidly. The mountains and earth below also started to turn red and showed signs of melting into magma. Everyone's expressions changed drastically upon seeing this, and they couldn't help but let loose cries of astonishment. Great sun fire? Isn't this the power of the 3 disasters and 9 tribulations? Oh my God, the ancestral fiend god has yet to recover his strength, but he can already use the power of the 3 disasters? It's over. Not only will Tianxing suffer, millions of soldiers will also be buried in the sea of fire. In the ancient legends, the ancestral demon god was known as the Grim Reaper. Wherever he appeared, death would follow. It controlled the power of the 3 disasters and 9 tribulations and could bring about devastating disasters to the world. Even the gods did not dare to provoke it. However, no one expected the ancestor fiend celestial to be able to release the power of the calamities after recovering to the peak essence soul realm. When the raging fire poured down, it would definitely destroy everything within a radius of 500 miles, destroying the entire formation and slaughtering millions of soldiers. Ji Tianxing was the first to bear the brunt and was about to be engulfed by the raging flames. His situation was the most dangerous. However, he still maintained his calm. His eyes were as gloomy as ice, flickering with the light of contemplation. He channeled all his energy and formed a 7-colored shield that was 8,000 feet tall to protect his giant body. Boom! The raging flames poured down from the sky and drowned his figure. His seven-colored shield instantly trembled from the impact of the monstrous flames, and dense cracks appeared on it. He endured the terrifying heat as his skin and flesh quickly shriveled up, and black smoke rose from his body. However, the seven-colored shield did not shatter, and he only suffered light injuries. This result made him react immediately, and a bright light flashed across his eyes. That's not right. This is not the real Great Solar Fire. It's just a facade. If it was the real Great Solar Fire, I would have been burned to ashes in one blow. The ancestral fiend god is only at the essence soul realm after all. He can't use the real god-level secret technique. At this thought, Ji Tianxing did not hesitate to take out the Big Dipper God Fire Cauldron. He waved his palms and channeled a vast amount of energy to activate the Big Dipper God Fire Cauldron. The divine cauldron immediately swelled up and rapidly became as big as 100 miles. Swoosh! The divine cauldron exploded with a terrifying devouring power, forming a pitch-black whirlpool at the mouth of the cauldron and wildly devouring the raging flames in the sky. The boundless raging flames poured down on the ground and burned tens of thousands of soldiers to death in the blink of an eye. However, most of the golden raging flames were devoured by the huge whirlpool. In a short span of 10 breaths, the Big Dipper God Fire Cauldron had swallowed all the raging flames in the array into the divine cauldron. The divine cauldron was temporarily unable to refine and suppress such raging flames. The cauldron's body was slightly red, and its temperature was extremely high. However, the divine cauldron did not suffer any damage and could still hold on. The inside of the formation returned to normal. The millions of soldiers who had narrowly escaped death all revealed expressions of relief. When the ancestral fiend god saw this, he was shocked and roared furiously, "No, this is impossible. Just based on a worm like you, how could you possibly resolve this god's great solar fire? Your broken cauldron is only an essence, soul, realm dharma treasure." The ancestral fiend god was most proud of the power of the 3 disasters and 9 tribulations. It was also because of this that he was crowned with the title of Grim Reaper and was feared by all the deities in the world. But now, Ji Tianxing had used the Big Dipper God Fire Cauldron to resolve the Great Solar Fire. This was undoubtedly a great insult and blow to him. He had lost all his face and was so ashamed that he wanted to die. Ji Tianxing kept the Big Dipper God Fire Cauldron and shouted coldly, "Grim Reaper, I will show you my divine flames and let you have a taste of it." As he said that, he slowly stretched out his left palm and released a destructive attack. God-slaying spear. Endless golden divine flames spewed out from his left palm and condensed into a golden divine spear that was 100 feet long. It suddenly pierced towards the ancestral fiend god. Swoosh! In an instant, the golden divine spear had traveled 50 miles and arrived in front of the ancestral fiend god. The golden divine spear was about to pierce through the middle head of the ancestral fiend god. At this critical moment, the ancestral fiend god could not dodge in time and could only tilt his head. Boom! The golden divine spear viciously pierced the left head of the ancestral fiend god and exploded with a deafening sound. That huge and hideous head of the ancestral fiend god exploded on the spot. Pieces of flesh and blood splattered everywhere as if there was a black rain. One of the ancestral fiend god's 3 heads was destroyed just like that. He roared in pain. "Ah, you damn reptile! You ant! How dare you injure this god? You are dead. I will definitely destroy your soul and never let you be reincarnated. Today, no one in the world can save you." The ancestral fiend god called himself the great ancient fiend god and was above all the other deities. He was unparalleled and extremely honorable. A human youth in the essence soul realm, who was as weak as an ant, had actually destroyed his head. This was an unprecedented shame and humiliation. Even the water of the East Sea could not wash away this monstrous hatred. Chapter 1459. An earth-shattering roar reverberated across a radius of 1,000 miles. The ancestor fiend celestial emitted a suppressive aura that enveloped the entire array. The boundless purple light formed rings of purple ripples that spread out in all directions and engulfed more than 3 million soldiers. The purple ripples clashed with the power of the array, creating a loud rumbling sound. Many of the weaker soldiers exploded on the spot, causing a rain of blood to splatter all over the sky. The enraged ancestor fiend celestial unleashed his most powerful strength. He wanted to kill Ji Tianxing at all costs to vent his anger. Black Sun Hurricane. The ancestor fiend celestial roared furiously as he waved his 6 arms and 8 wings. He opened his mouth and spat out a black hurricane that covered the sky and blasted it at Ji Tianxing. The pure black hurricane contained a terrifying aura of death and was extremely violent. Ji Tianxing knew that the terrifying black hurricane was 10 times stronger than the void storm. Even a god's body would be blown apart and his primordial spirit destroyed. The ancestor fiend celestial's strength had not recovered to its peak, and the power of the Black Sun Hurricane was greatly reduced. However, the black hurricane that covered the sky could still slaughter millions of soldiers and even grind them to dust. At the critical moment, he used his ultimate technique without hesitation. His body emitted a golden light that covered the sky, Dharma body of heaven and earth. He used the ultimate technique that the Mansion Master had imparted to him and frantically absorbed the power of the ancient sword array. He also gathered the power of heaven and earth within 1,000 miles and poured it into his body. Swoosh! His body, which was hundreds of feet tall, flashed with 7-colored spiritual light and condensed into a huge shield. In the next moment, endless black sun tornadoes came crashing down one after another. Bam! 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 The Black Sun Hurricane and the 7-colored shield collided, creating a deafening sound that shook the earth and caused cracks to appear. Ji Tianxing bore the brunt of the impact. His 7-colored shield kept crumbling, shattering, reforming, and recovering. His body trembled and his face was pale. Blood flowed from his mouth and nostrils, and his strength was rapidly weakening. However, he gritted his teeth and endured, trying his best to resist the power of the Black Sun Hurricane. After 10 breaths of time, the hundreds of Black Sun Hurricanes finally dissipated. He managed to dodge the attack, but his 7-colored shield had completely collapsed. His huge body was also covered in wounds and holes. From the wounds and holes that were so deep that bones could be seen, crimson and golden blood constantly gushed out and sprinkled down from the sky onto the ground. It was as if he had been slashed by 10,000 swords. His entire body was riddled with wounds, and it was a tragic sight. The heart-wrenching pain caused him to let out a deep roar. It was as if there was a flame in his chest that was about to explode. Ji Tianxing raised his head and roared angrily. He waved his palms with all his might, striking out a series of mysterious seals to activate the ancient sword array. Time flies. Only the sword is eternal. With the power of heaven and earth, slay the devil with 10,000 swords. Following his furious roar, the ancient god's sword array lit up with a golden light that soared into the sky, erupting with its most powerful power. Swish! Swish! Within the tens of thousands of array nodes, the boundless divine power of heaven and earth condensed into tens of thousands of giant swords of golden light. Immediately, the ancient god's sword array revealed its original appearance. The tens of thousands of golden swords sealed off an area of 500 miles, forming a divine sword array. Under Ji Tianxing's control, the entire array began to operate rapidly. The tens of thousands of giant swords of golden light also flew through the air, stabbing towards the ancestor fiend celestial. The giant swords of golden light that filled the sky were arranged according to a special pattern and position. Containing the mysteries of the ancient god's sword array, they attacked and stabbed one after another. In an instant, the giant net of golden swords that filled the sky enveloped the ancestor fiend celestial. Bam! 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 Swish! Swish! The sky was in chaos. Dazzling golden and purple light constantly flickered, covering hundreds of miles of land. Ji Tianxing, the 3 sovereigns, the 12 soul tempering experts, and the 3 million soldiers worked together to activate the power of the sword array, trying their best to kill the ancestor fiend celestial. No matter how strong the ancestor fiend celestial was, it was unable to withstand the attacks of the tens of thousands of swords. Very soon, its flesh was torn apart by the sword light, and it screamed in pain. In a net of golden swords, the ancestor fiend celestial dashed left and right, frantically waving its arms and 8 wings to block the attacks of the golden swords. However, its body was too large. The tens of thousands of sword lights stabbed it from all directions and angles, making it impossible for it to defend itself. At every moment, it would be stabbed by the golden swords, leaving wounds and bloody holes on its huge body. Purple demon blood and flesh splattered everywhere. As time passed, its injuries worsened. There was not a single spot on its body that was intact, making it look extremely terrifying. However, the ancestor fiend celestial had rich battle experience, and was not something an ordinary expert could compare to. Even though its body was covered in wounds, those wounds were not fatal. They were only light injuries, especially its primordial spirit, which was very well protected. It was impossible for it to be injured. As it blocked the attacks of the tens of thousands of swords, it observed the sword array calmly, quickly deducing a way to break it. Even though its strength had not recovered to its peak, it was still an ancient fiend celestial. It was extremely knowledgeable, and its martial arts experience was as vast as the ocean. In a short span of 100 breaths, when its body was covered in blood and there was not a single piece of intact flesh, it finally saw through the secret of the 10,000 sword array. God-destroying heavenly demon fist. The ancestor fiend celestial suddenly roared angrily. It waved its 6 arms, condensing huge black fish shadows, and punched towards 3 areas around it. Those 3 areas were the intersections of the sword array formed by the golden swords. They were also the nodes of the sword array. Once the nodes of the sword array were destroyed, the power of the sword array would not be able to operate smoothly and would break and shatter. Pung 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 pung. Following 6 deafening muffled explosions, the 3 areas that were flickering with golden light were blasted to pieces on the spot, bursting with golden light that filled the sky. The rapidly flying golden swords suddenly became stagnant and disrupted. Their power was also greatly reduced. There were even hundreds of golden swords that lost the support of the sword array. They left the golden light sword array and fell to the ground powerlessly. When the ancestor fiend celestial saw that his actions were effective, he sneered mockingly. He waved his fist again and punched out a few huge fish shadows. Pung 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 pung. There was another series of loud explosions, and a few more nodes of the sword array were destroyed. At least 2,000 golden swords were affected. Their flying speed slowed down, and their power was greatly reduced. The sword array also became chaotic. The ancestor fiend celestial laughed proudly. He waved his 6 arms crazily and rampaged through the sword array, wantonly destroying it. Ji Tianxing sensed the abnormality of the sword array. He anxiously circulated his energy, trying to restore the sword array. However, he was not proficient enough in controlling the sword array. He could not keep up with the speed of the ancestor fiend celestial's destruction. Chapter 1460. The sword formation that enveloped the ancestor fiend celestial was crumbling at a visible speed. The number of golden swords decreased as the ancestor fiend celestial continued to destroy the sword formation, shattering countless golden swords. Very quickly, another 100 breaths of time passed. The sword formation had become extremely thin. Through the golden light that filled the sky, one could already see the ancestor fiend celestial's figure clearly. Its body, which was over 10,000 feet tall, was covered in huge wounds and bloody holes, with countless pieces of flesh hanging from them. In those wounds and holes, one could clearly see its skeleton and innards. Demonic blood was also constantly flowing out. On the surface, the ancestor fiend celestial's injuries were extremely tragic. Its body was already on the verge of collapse. But in reality, it was only considered a serious injury. It was not life-threatening. Its skeleton and innards, meridians and primordial spirit were all undamaged. Its strength was still very strong. Kaboom! All of a sudden, an earth-shattering explosion erupted. The thin golden light sword formation was shattered by the ancestor fiend celestial on the spot. More than half of the golden swords were shattered. A small portion of the golden swords were sent flying in all directions. Thousands of innocent soldiers were smashed into smithereens by the chaotic swords. They died on the spot. The ancestor fiend celestial finally destroyed the sword formation and broke free from its restraints. Roar! It flew high into the sky once again and roared at the sky. Its body emitted purple light that shot into the sky. Ji Tianxing, you despicable worm. This god has already said that everything you do is futile. You want to kill this god with just you and these worms? What a fool's dream. It looked down at Ji Tianxing. Sharp fangs and bones could be seen in its bloody mouth, which looked extremely ferocious. Ji Tianxing flew into the sky and faced it from 10 miles away. He shouted with a cold expression, "Death God, so what if you broke my demon-slaying sword formation? My ancient divine sword formation has gathered the strength of more than 3 million soldiers. It can definitely suppress you here and kill you completely. Look at your ugly appearance now. With such serious injuries, how much strength do you have left? Stop your pointless struggle and resistance. You will definitely die today." The rolling sound waves were like muffled thunder, spreading throughout the entire formation. When the 3 million soldiers heard Ji Tianxing's words, their morale was greatly boosted, and their hearts were filled with anticipation. Everyone was certain that the combined forces of the three races would definitely be able to slay the ancestor fiend celestial. After this battle, the Tianxian land would be at peace for eternity. There would be no more disasters. However, the ancestor fiend celestial laughed contemptuously. Ji Tianxing, in order to boost our morale, you're really full of nonsense. This is merely a flesh wound. This god doesn't care at all. You should know very well that this god's physical body is made up of those 4 divine items. As long as those 4 divine items are not destroyed, this god's body will be invincible. It was true that the god heart, god blood, god tendons, and god bones were the foundation and framework of its body. As long as these 4 divine objects were intact, Ji Tianxing would not be able to destroy its body. Ji Tianxing's expression remained unchanged as he sneered with a sinister tone. The Fiend Emperor seized the divine objects of my senior brothers and sisters to help you forge your divine body. Of course, I know this. However, you wouldn't be so naive to think that a body forged from those 4 divine objects is truly invincible, right? Hearing this, the ancestor Fiend Celestial was instantly stunned. He frowned. Ji Tianxing, what do you mean? Ha ha ha. Ji Tianxing sneered and said with a cold tone, "This body of yours is not perfect. It still has flaws and weak points. Before my senior brothers and sisters passed away, they told me this secret. Therefore, you are dead meat." As his voice fell, Ji Tianxing waved his palms again and struck out a mysterious seal. He executed a secret technique to control the sword formation. The sword formation within a radius of 500 miles lit up with golden light that shot up to the sky again. It condensed into thousands of giant golden swords. Not only that, Ji Tianxing also summoned his primordial spirit dharma characteristic, and 1,000 feet tall golden sword shadow appeared behind him. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. His primordial spirit golden sword also split into thousands of golden swords and merged with the 1,000 golden swords produced by the sword formation. Soul slash. Ji Tianxing roared angrily as he used the soul slash sword technique and the power of the sword formation to control the 2,000 golden swords to attack the ancestor fiend celestial. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 2,000 giant golden swords released dazzling golden light and immediately formed a huge sword net that enveloped the ancestor fiend celestial. 1,000 golden swords carried the powerful power of the sword formation as they frantically stabbed the ancestor fiend celestial's body, targeting its weak points and weak points. The other 1,000 primordial spirit golden swords attacked the ancestor Fiend Celestial's primordial spirit. Immediately, the ancestor Fiend Celestial was in danger again. His flesh and blood were splattered by the overwhelming golden light as he roared angrily. Ah, damn worm! How can you master such a divine technique? You are only at the primordial spirit realm and have never left the Tian-Shin continent. How can you have such a technique? This time, the ancestor Fiend Celestial truly felt the threat of death and had no choice but to fight back with all his might. Other than rage, there was also unparalleled shock and astonishment in his heart. He could not imagine that a human youth in his 20s could use a technique that was close to the level of a god. He also knew the ancient Fiend Celestial very well. This was simply impossible. As time passed, the 2,000 golden swords attacked the ancestor Fiend Celestial in a frenzy. The ancestor Fiend Celestial's injuries continued to worsen, and his body became even more damaged. The 12 weak points and weak points on his body were also attacked and stabbed frequently. However, the 2,000 golden swords did not move in the form of a sword formation. They were unpredictable and unpredictable, making it impossible to guard against them. He could not deal with the 2,000 golden swords like how he dealt with the sword formation. He could only use his most powerful strength to destroy all the golden swords to escape danger. Unfortunately, this was impossible. All he could do was to block and defend with all his might to stall for time and think of another way. Unknowingly, 15 minutes passed. The ancestor Fiend Celestial's flesh and blood had been completely destroyed by the golden swords. He had turned into a gigantic skeletal demon that was as tall as a mountain. All that was left of his body was a purple skeleton, dark red meridians, and the organs in his chest. A huge black purple light shield protected his entire body, blocking the attacks of the golden swords. In a short period of time, Ji Tianxing was unable to break through the shield, nor was he able to destroy his body. However, the shockwaves from the battle continued to spread and had already killed more than 300,000 human soldiers. The power of calamity released by the ancestor Fiend Celestial had also severely injured nearly 1 million soldiers. Although everyone endured their injuries, they gritted their teeth and continued to maintain the operation of the ancient divine sword formation, trying their best to suppress the ancestor Fiend Celestial. However, Ji Tianxing knew that the ancient divine sword formation could only last for 30 minutes at most before it ran out of energy and lost its effectiveness. Chapter 1461. Since Ji Tianxing could see the problem, the ancestor Fiend Celestial could naturally see it too. It saw that the numbers of the three clans' army were constantly decreasing, and most of them were heavily injured. Based on the current situation, the ancient divine sword formation would not be able to last for long before it weakened and even collapsed. Therefore, it used its strongest defensive mystic technique, using all its strength to maintain the purple light shield to block the 2,000 golden swords. As long as it could last for 30 minutes, it would be able to turn the situation around. When the ancient divine sword formation collapsed, Ji Tianxing and the 3 million soldiers would not be able to trap it. When that happened, it would be able to slaughter the three clans' army as it wished and torture Ji Tianxing to death. As time passed, the soldiers' strength continued to weaken, and the sword formation's power was also slowly decreasing. Ji Tianxing became more and more anxious as he pondered. Is there any other way to make the sword formation explode with even more power and break through the ancestor Fiend Celestial's defensive shield? As long as I can break through its shield, I can attack its vital points and weak points and destroy its body. Once its body is destroyed and only its primordial spirit is left, we will have a chance to kill it. This thought flashed across his mind, and he racked his brains to find a solution. Suddenly, he looked down at the ground below, and as he observed the situation of the soldiers, he discovered a clue. The ground below was already soaked in blood. The dark brown soil had also turned dark red. There was the blood of many soldiers, as well as the blood that flowed from his body. After all, his injuries were very serious, and his body was covered in wounds, and he was still bleeding. Strangely, on the ground that was soaked in blood, there were actually strands of golden aura that seeped out. Countless strands of golden aura, as light as strands of hair, flew into the sky and gathered in the ancient divine sword formation. This discovery caused Ji Tianxing to be startled, and a strong sense of doubt arose in his heart. Those golden auras contained powerful energy and seemed to be refined from blood. However, why would these auras merge into the ancient divine sword formation? Could it be that this is one of the effects of the ancient divine sword formation, that it can absorb the energy from blood? Ji Tianxing had only grasped the basics of the ancient god sword array. He could smoothly set it up and control it. He didn't know much about the ancient god sword formation. Of course, he didn't know what effects and uses the sword formation had. In order to confirm his thoughts, he used his qi to force out the blood in his body. Like two dark red and golden water pillars, they poured onto the ground below. Suddenly, dense golden threads gushed out from the blood-soaked ground and quickly gathered in the ancient god sword array. Although he had lost a lot of blood, his face was increasingly pale and his strength was somewhat weak. However, the power of the ancient divine sword formation had clearly increased, causing the thousands of golden swords to become even more powerful. As expected, this sword formation was indeed able to absorb the power of fresh blood. That's great. I finally have a way to deal with the ancestral fiend god. Ji Tianxing's heart was filled with excitement after discovering this secret. He hurriedly transmitted this secret to the Celestial Demon Emperor, the Golden Dragon Emperor, and the Celestial Demon Emperor. The three supreme martial artists were also filled with anxiety. They had a premonition that the situation was far from good. Suddenly hearing this news, the three supreme martial artists saw the dawn of victory. They were pleasantly surprised and agreed. They hurriedly gave orders to the army of the three clans, allowing the soldiers to use their qi to force out their blood and pour it into the sword formation. The army of the three clans was already riddled with injuries. Many of them couldn't hold on any longer. If they used their qi to force out their qi, it would be very dangerous for them. It would make their strength even weaker, and they might even faint. However, the army of the three clans was as united as a fortress. No one questioned the orders of the three supreme martial artists. In order to kill the ancestral fiend god, they were willing to pay any price. They weren't even afraid of dying on the battlefield. Who would be afraid of bleeding? Instantly, countless soldiers poured their hot blood onto the ground within the sword formation. The ground within a radius of a few hundred miles was dyed red by the soldiers' hot blood. It was especially mournful. Immediately after, an earth-shattering golden aura rose from the ground. Like densely packed threads, it quickly merged into the ancient god sword formation. The power of the sword formation rapidly increased. Soon, it more than doubled, and it was still increasing. Ji Tianxing was replenished by the majestic power. His body continued to grow, and he actually reached a height of 10,000 feet. The power of the thousands of golden swords also more than doubled. An extremely terrifying suppressive power ruthlessly suppressed the ancestral fiend god, causing his situation to become more and more difficult. Finally, his purple light shield could no longer bear the burden. It could no longer withstand the bombardment of the golden light. Kacha-kacha! Following a series of crisp cracking sounds, cracks appeared on the purple light shield. Like a spider web, the cracks spread out in all directions. Seeing this, the army of the three clans was invigorated. They continued to use their qi to force out their qi and sprinkle it into the sword formation. The power of the ancient god sword formation increased again. Ji Tianxing's body also grew more and more. He was about to explode. His body was also contorted, and he let out a painful growl. When his power was about to reach its limit, he let out a loud roar. Holding the sword of burial of heaven with both hands, he fiercely slashed with his strongest sword. Sky's splitting sword, the 8,000 feet long pitch-black sword lit up with a dazzling golden light. It condensed into a 2,000 feet long golden sword and slashed at the ancestral fiend god. This sword contained Ji Tianqing's strongest power. It was the most powerful sword of the unity of heaven and earth and the unity of man and sword. In his life, he had never exploded with such terrifying power. Without a doubt, this was the most powerful sword of his life. Kaboom! A deafening sound rang out, as if divine thunder had exploded. It shook the heavens and earth for thousands of miles. The purple light shield that protected the ancestral fiend god was shattered into pieces on the spot. It turned into fragments that blotted out the sky. The destructive shockwave carried the purple light shards and spread out in all directions. It fiercely attacked the ancient god sword formation. Countless soldiers were severely injured. They had also expended a large amount of qi and blood. They were extremely weak. When the terrifying shockwave came, they had nowhere to hide. They could only be killed by the shockwave and sacrificed in the sword formation. In the blink of an eye, more than half of the 3 million soldiers were severely injured. Hundreds of thousands of people were killed on the spot. Those who were lucky enough to survive were only about 2,400,000. Such heavy losses made the three Supremes extremely worried. They were so angry that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. However, when everyone saw the ancestral fiend god situation, they felt much better. The ancestral fiend god's shield had been destroyed. His huge skeletal body was instantly slashed open by the sky-splitting sword. The 2,000 golden swords exploded with their strongest power. They crazily attacked his body, producing earth-shattering sounds. His huge body was collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon it disintegrated. Chapter 1462. In just 10 breaths' time, the ancestor Fiend Celestial's body was destroyed. The gigantic skeleton, which was over 1,000 feet long, turned into countless broken bones that rained down from the sky and scattered on the ground. The god's heart, god's bones, and god's tendons were extremely tough and difficult to destroy. However, these divine items only took up a small portion of its entire body. Most of the skeleton was broken, and the god's heart and god's tendons were also mixed with the broken bones and buried in the ruins. The ancestor Fiend Celestial could not believe this result. It was shocked, terrified, and extremely angry. It could never have imagined that those 3 million ant-like soldiers would actually work together to destroy its divine body. Without the protection of its divine body, it was only left with its primordial spirit, which rampaged through the chaotic sky. At the same time, the three armies suffered heavy casualties, and the ancient god sword formation had many gaps. Originally, the sword formation had more than 10,000 nodes, and each node was formed by more than 300 soldiers. But now, more than 800,000 soldiers have been killed, and the three armies only had 2,400,000 soldiers left. Among the survivors, half of them were heavily injured and very weak. Many nodes of the sword formation had been destroyed, and either no one was supporting it, or there were only a few dozen people left. With problems with the nodes of the formation, it could not operate smoothly, and the flow of energy was difficult. The 7-colored light barrier that covered a radius of 250 miles started to crack, and it let out cracking sounds. The power of the ancient god sword formation rapidly weakened, and the light barrier also became fragmented, constantly flickering with 7-colored brilliance. Ji Tianqing lost the support of the majestic energy, and his body gradually shrank, and his energy also slowly dissipated. Seeing this, its primordial spirit condensed into a huge purple sword that was more than 300 meters long, and it unleashed an extremely powerful energy, stabbing towards Ji Tianqing. Swoosh! In just an instant, its purple sword was in front of Ji Tianqing, and it was about to smash Ji Tianqing's head. At the critical moment, he held the 800-meter-long sword of burial of heaven horizontally in front of him. Ask the heavens with the horizontal sword. In the next moment, the huge purple sword ruthlessly clashed with the sword of burial of heaven, and there was a loud boom that shook the sky. The burial of heaven trembled intensely and let out a buzzing noise. Ji Tianqing was also sent flying backward, rolling and smashing into the sky tens of miles away. The ancestral Fiend Celestial's purple sword was also sent flying back, flickering with purple light crazily. In this head-on collision, it did not gain the upper hand. Instead, its origin spirit was shaken. Shwa! The purple sword Yuan's spirit flew backward for 30 miles before stopping in the sky. The ancestral devil god was filled with shock as he exclaimed in disbelief, "This is impossible! Damned little bastard! How could he have a divine sword?" To the ancestral Fiend Celestial, primordial spirit level magic treasures were all trash. To be able to shock it and call it a divine sword, it was obviously a real divine weapon. He knew clearly that it was impossible for a divine weapon to appear on the Tianxian land. However, the Sword of Burial of Heaven in Ji Tianxing's hand allowed it to clearly sense the aura of the divine sword. A true divine artifact could slay its primordial spirit and obliterate it forever. Therefore it panicked. Its heart was filled with shock and panic. It no longer dared to tangle with Ji Tianxing as it turned and fled without hesitation. Phew! The purple sword Yuan's spirit tore through the chaotic sky and rushed towards the edge of the rainbow light barrier, heading straight for a huge crack. Where there's life, there's hope. Damned little bastard! How dare he destroy this god's body? After this god recuperates in seclusion for a few decades to recover my strength and reform my body, I'll definitely tear him into pieces and destroy his body and soul. As the ancestral Fiend Celestial fled, this thought flashed through his mind. However, at this moment, Ji Tianxing used divine concealment step and rushed over diagonally from behind. 7-star sword. He maintained his 8,000 feet tall body as he brazenly brandished the huge sword of Burial of Heaven, ruthlessly thrusting out 7 sword beams. Shwa 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 shwa. The 7 dark golden sword beams contained dense purple lightning as they attacked the ancestral Fiend Celestial's primordial spirit from 7 different directions. The sword beams sealed off a radius of 10,000 feet, leaving the ancestral Fiend Celestial's purple sword with nowhere to run. Bam 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 bam. Following a few dull explosions, the 7-star sword ruthlessly stabbed into it, sending out golden light and purple lightning that filled the sky. The sky within a radius of a few dozen miles was enveloped by the golden and purple light, creating a raging hurricane. The ancestral Fiend Celestial's purple sword trembled from the 7-star sword's attacks. The divine and violent power of lightning made it even more painful. Cracks appeared on the purple sword of the primordial spirit. The pain of being struck by lightning was no less than the pain of undergoing the heavenly tribulation. However, it could only endure the injuries to its primordial spirit and was unable to fight Ji Tianxing. It also did not dare to waste any more time and could only try its best to escape. Phew! The dazzling purple sword Yuan's spirit instantly traversed 10 miles, passing through the crack in the rainbow light barrier and escaping the ancient god sword array's range. Swoosh! When it rushed out of the array and regained its freedom, it did not hesitate to fly high into the sky and escape towards the east. Ji Tianxing, I will remember today's humiliation. Just you wait. When I recover my strength, I will definitely grind your bones to dust and use the world's most insidious methods to kill you. When that time comes, I will not only kill you, I will also kill everyone related to you. As the ancestral Fiend Celestial flew in the sky, it did not forget to send out a spiritual consciousness transmission that covered a radius of a few hundred miles. Its roar was filled with grief and indignation, and its tone was extremely sinister and venomous. It was clearly imprinted in the minds of millions of people, causing them to shudder in fear. Ji Tianxing immediately frowned as he used the divine concealment step and chased after it with murderous intent. Ancestral Fiend Celestial, you still want to escape? Wishful thinking. Even if I have to chase you to the ends of the world, I will personally kill you. How can I let you have the chance to heal your injuries and take revenge? Ji Tianxing chased after him as fast as a beam of light as he shouted in a cold tone. In the blink of an eye, He had traversed over 100 miles and was only 15 miles away from the ancestral fiend celestial. Seeing that he was still 7,000 feet tall, his strength was still unmatched, and his speed was also as fast as light, the ancestral fiend celestial immediately used all its strength to escape. The two of them chased each other in the sky as they flew towards the east at an extremely fast speed. Soon, they disappeared into the horizon. On the battlefield, the rainbow light barrier that was like a canopy in the sky finally shattered. The entire ancient god sword array collapsed and turned into specks of light that dissipated into the sky. It was already late at night, and the night sky was as dark as ink. The demonic aura that filled the sky had yet to dissipate. Over 2 million soldiers were lying on the blood-soaked ground, exhausted, as they panted violently. Although the three armies had suffered heavy casualties and the survivors were all seriously injured, it was a tragic sight. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief, as though a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. They wore gratified smiles on their faces. Chapter 1463. The armies of the three clans rested on the battlefield for a long time. At this point, the chaos of the demon race was finally resolved. This long and drawn-out war could finally come to an end. More than a year ago, the demon race army that invaded the central state numbered as many as 30 million. And now, the 30 million demon race army had all perished in the central state, vanishing into thin air. The demon emperor, Grand Jia Luo, Brahma, Soul Nightmare, demon General Ming Yi, the four blood god venerables, and countless powerful demon generals and demon kings had all been killed. The demon race that invaded the central state had all died a horrible death, their bodies and souls destroyed. Even the demon race's ancestor, demon god's body, had been destroyed by the joint efforts of everyone. Only an injured primordial spirit was left, and it fled towards the east. The strongest person of the human race, Ji Tianxing, had already chased after the ancestor demon god. The soldiers of the three clans believed that soon they would hear the news of victory from Ji Tianxing. The ancestor demon god's primordial spirit would definitely not escape the fate of being killed. The demon race had been completely defeated. The crisis of the central state had been resolved, and the situation of the entire Tianxian continent had stabilized, returning to peace and tranquility. More than 2 million soldiers rejoiced for a long time on the ruins of the battle before gradually quieting down. Countless people waved their blood-stained swords and weapons, cheering excitedly. Many people gathered together to discuss, praising the good names of Ji Tianxing and the three supremes with admiration. There were also a few people who endured the pain of their broken bodies and silently bandaged their wounds, taking elixirs to treat their injuries. There were even a small number of soldiers who wept sorrowfully. Some of them even started to cry loudly. Such a bloody and tragic battle had taken away too many lives, bringing a tragic calamity to the central state. Even though the armies of the three clans had won, their comrades and brothers and sisters had already lost their lives in the war. At this moment, looking at the incomparably tragic battlefield, these soldiers were touched by the scene, and all sorts of feelings welled up in their hearts. Of course, they could not help but cry. The Emperor, Golden Dragon Emperor, and Skynet, Demon Emperor stood side by side high in the sky, overlooking the battlefield below. Looking at the mountains of corpses and rivers of blood on the battlefield, as well as the miserable state of the soldiers of the three clans, the three supreme martial artists were filled with emotions, and their expressions were rather complicated. The Emperor's hair was disheveled and his face was pale. He coughed a few times and leaned on the sword of the human sovereign with both hands. He said in a low voice, "The calamity of the central state and the catastrophe of the continent is finally over." The heavenly net demon emperor nodded in agreement. That's right. In the past 2 years, the demon race's army invaded the western wasteland, wantonly slaughtering our people, creating boundless sin. More than 500 million soldiers and people of our demon race have been sacrificed. They have all died under the butcher knife of the demon race. Fortunately, the devil race's army has been completely annihilated, and the Devil Emperor and many Devil Marshals have also died in battle. The remaining Devil Race's army in the West Wasteland is no longer a concern. Golden Dragon Emperor also nodded with a gratified smile and said, "The main force of the devilish army has been destroyed, and the devilish sovereign has been slain by Ji Tianxing. Even the body of the ancestral devilish god has been destroyed by him. After this battle, the devil race of the northern desert only exists in name. Sooner or later, they will be annihilated by our three races. In this battle, Ji Tianxing has contributed greatly. He is the one who saved the Central State and the entire Tianxian continent." Hearing Golden Dragon Emperor's words, the Emperor looked at him with a smile and asked, "Dragon Emperor, aren't you exaggerating?" Golden Dragon Emperor raised his eyebrows and looked at him from the corner of his eyes. "What? You're not convinced, old man? Or are you afraid that Ji Tianxing will steal your limelight and fame? I'll be frank. If it wasn't for Ji Tianxing killing the devilish sovereign and finding a way to deal with the ancestral devilish god, we would have died on the battlefield. Would we still be here talking about heroes? I'm not exaggerating when I say that Ji Tianxing has saved the entire Central State and the Tianxian continent." The Heavenly Net Demon Emperor also nodded with a smile. He quickly tried to smooth things over and said, "Emperor, I agree with the Dragon Emperor on this matter. Ji Tianxing is indeed the savior of the continent. If it wasn't for him, none of us would have been able to kill the devilish sovereign, much less defeat the ancestral devilish god. We don't need to argue about this. The soldiers of the three races know this in their hearts. Didn't you hear that when the soldiers of the three races were discussing, they were all praising and worshiping Ji Tianxing and rarely mentioning us? In any case, this emperor is sincerely convinced. You should also relax and accept reality." After hearing their words, the emperor couldn't help but laugh. "Ha ha! You two old things, what kind of person do you take me for? Do you think I'm a narrow-minded, self-indulgent ruler who envies the virtuous? Tianxing's sacrifice and effort, the pain and danger he went through, I know better than any of you. I'm happier and more gratified than you that he can achieve what he has today and receive such great honor." Heavenly Net Demon Emperor and Golden Dragon Emperor were enlightened when they heard this. The three of them looked at each other and laughed heartily. There are talents in every generation, and each generation is stronger than the last. Let's quickly reorganize the army and return to the camp to rest and recuperate. We'll wait for Tianxing's good news. When Tianxing returns after killing the ancestral devilish god, I'll drink 300 cups with him. We won't go home until we're drunk." The three supreme martial artists discussed as they ordered the army to return to the camp to rest. When the army retreated from the battlefield and returned to the camp, the three supreme martial artists started discussing again. "Emperor, although you personally conferred Tianxing the title of Dominator, I see that the relationship between you and Tianxing is a little cold. This emperor's relationship with Tianxing is much closer. My son, Tai, and Tianxing are sworn brothers. They've been through life and death together. When Tianxing returns victorious, I'll bring Tai to drink with him. Sai, old Dragon Emperor, I'm friends with Tianxing despite our age difference. When Tianxing was still in the heavenly origin stage, he visited the imperial court of the West Wilderness as a guest. We had a good chat, and he even borrowed a magic treasure from me. To tell you the truth, my son, Kuan Wu, and Tianxing are good brothers. My daughter, Kuku, and Tianxing are as close as siblings. To be honest, I'm much closer to Tianxing than you are to him." The emperor smiled as he watched the two of them compete with each other. After they finished, he said slowly, "Since you're so close to Tianxing, you can drink with him slowly. I'll send someone to the Tianxian region to bring his father and the Ji family to the imperial court. Let his father cultivate in peace and enjoy the rest of his life." Heavenly Net Demon Emperor and Golden Dragon Emperor turned to look at him, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Amazing! How come I didn't think of this? As expected, the older the ginger, the spicier it is. Your method is really shameless. Tianxing values relationships the most. He'll definitely leave the Tianxian continent in the future. The one he's most worried about is his father. Emperor, if you bring his father to the imperial court, he'll have no more worries. He'll definitely be grateful to you. The emperor smiled and waved his hand. You're flattering me. Tianqing is the hero who defeated the demon race and saved millions of people. This merit will be immortalized for generations to come. No matter how much I reward him, it's insignificant compared to his contribution. Taking care of his father and the Ji family is part of my duty. At this point, the Heavenly Net, Demon Emperor, and Golden Dragon Emperor stopped joking around and began to discuss serious matters with solemn expressions. Emperor, after 3 days, when the army has rested, we'll return to the West Wilderness and the East Sea. There are still many demon race troops in the West Wilderness and the East Sea. We have to eliminate them as soon as possible. Chapter 1464. In the eastern part of the continent, there were 2 figures of light speeding through the sky towards the east. In front of them was a sword radiance flickering with purple light. It was as fast as lightning as it streaked across the sky. Following closely behind was a dark golden sword radiance. It was as dazzling as a shooting star. Without a doubt, it was the ancestor Fiend Celestial who was fleeing in panic, and Ji Tianqing who was hot on his heels. In a short span of 2 days, the 2 of them had sped all the way from the outskirts of Central State City. In another hour, they would have left the Tian-Shan continent and entered the vast East Sea. The ancestor Fiend Celestial tried his best to escape. He only wanted to enter the East Sea as soon as possible and shake off Ji Tianqing. In the process of escaping, he had already exchanged blows with Ji Tianqing twice. Both times, he was defeated. Not only did he not gain any advantage, his primordial spirit's injuries worsened. He had lost his divine body, and his primordial spirit was severely injured. He was not Ji Tianqing's match. Furthermore, Ji Tianqing was relentlessly chasing after him. He could not help but suspect that there were other pursuers behind him. If the human race's Emperor, Golden Dragon Emperor, and Demon Emperor arrived and joined forces with Ji Tianqing to kill him, would he still have a chance of survival? Thinking of this, the ancestor Fiend Celestial was filled with worry. He tried his best to escape. Despicable beast, how dare you make me end up in such a sorry state? You deserve to die. As he escaped, he cursed fiercely in his heart. Originally, I wanted to escape from Central State and find a secluded place to recuperate. When I reform my body and recover to my peak, I will find them for revenge. By then, I will slaughter all the humans in the world and wash the entire Central State with blood to vent my anger. However, Ji Tianqing is chasing after me relentlessly. I can't shake him off and have no chance to recuperate. It seems that if I want to shake him off, I can only go to the East Sea's returning ruins and escape from there. When the battle had just ended, the ancestor Fiend Celestial was enraged. He was almost in a state of madness. At that time, he only wanted to find a place to recuperate and wash the Central State with blood to take revenge on Ji Tianqing. However, 2 days passed. It gradually calmed down and recognized the reality and its situation. It could only suppress its anger and killing intent, dispel its unrealistic thoughts, and focus on escaping. There was a saying in the mortal world, revenge is a dish best served cold. To it, 10,000 years was not too late to take revenge for the God Fiend. It had already fallen for 30,000 years and had been dormant for such a long time before it was reborn. How could it be in a hurry? Behind the ancestral Fiend God, about 50 kilometers away in the sky, Ji Tianqing rode on a huge golden sword and chased after him at the speed of light. In the past 2 days, he had pursued the ancestral Fiend Celestial with all his might. He had even fought with the ancestral Fiend Celestial twice, which had greatly depleted his energy. As his power continued to weaken, his several hundred-meter-tall body also began to shrink. At this moment, he had already returned to his original appearance. When he saw the ancestor Fiend Celestial fleeing with all his might without any intention of stopping, he couldn't help muttering to himself, "The ancestor devil god is already heavily injured. Why didn't he escape to the northern desert? Why did he escape to the eastern sea? Could it be that he knows that there is a nine-heaven platform in the Eastern Sea's bottomless ruins that leads to the Shenwu continent? He knows that he can't escape from my pursuit, so he wants to escape from the Tianxian continent? Ji Tianxing pondered and analyzed the situation, feeling that there was a high possibility of this. If I can force the ancestor fiend celestial to leave the Tianxian continent, that would be a good thing. At least in the short term, he won't be able to harm the people of the various races in the Tianxian continent. When he thought of this, he heaved a sigh of relief. Not long after, the two of them entered the Eastern Sea region. Things went as Ji Tianxing had expected. The ancestor fiend celestial flew across the sky above the sea like a bolt of lightning, heading straight for the northeast. Ji Tianxing was still in hot pursuit. He burst forth with his fastest speed, but he still couldn't catch up. The two of them maintained a distance of 50 to 100 kilometers between them. Very quickly, another 2 days passed. On this evening, Ji Tianxing chased after the ancestor fiend celestial and flew into the Eastern Sea's bottomless ruins. At this point, he was very sure of his guess. He also knew that it was basically impossible to kill the ancestor fiend celestial's primordial spirit and completely destroy it. The best result would be to chase the ancestor fiend celestial out of the Tianxian continent. At noon on the second day, the two of them were about to reach the end of the Eastern Sea's bottomless ruins and enter the Nine Heavens platform. At the end of the sea, in front of them, there was a stretch of towering black shadows that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Ji Tianxing knew that those huge black shadows were all thousands of feet tall mountains. There was a total of 81 black mountain peaks, like 81 guards that surrounded them in a circle. In the middle of the mountains was a pitch-black abyss with a radius of a few hundred kilometers. The mysterious Nine Heavens platform floated above the abyss and had existed since ancient times. Even in the sunny day, the Nine Heavens platform flickered with bright white light, like a round moon hanging in the sky. Swoosh! When the ancestor fiend celestial saw the Nine Heavens platform, he instantly became spirited and sped up in excitement. In a short span of time, he flew to the edge of the Nine Heavens platform and was above the two mountain peaks. If he took a few more steps forward, he would enter the Nine Heavens platform area. If he barged in recklessly, he would be killed by the Nine Heavens divine thunder. If he stopped, Ji Tianxing would immediately catch up with him, and the outcome would be disastrous. Ji Tianxing originally thought that the ancestor fiend celestial would definitely stop, or at least hesitate and consider it. However, he completely did not expect that the ancestor fiend celestial would not reduce his speed at all. With a whoosh, he crossed the two towering mountains and flew into the black abyss area. Just as the ancestor fiend celestial entered the Nine Heavens platform area, the round jade platform high in the sky suddenly lit up with bright white light. Boom! A dull roar of thunder exploded high in the sky. The originally clear sky immediately turned pitch black, as if night had descended. Above the Nine Heavens platform, boundless black clouds surged out of nowhere and covered the entire Nine Heavens platform area. Within the layers of black clouds, purple lightning flashed and was accumulating a vast amount of power. Without a doubt, the Nine Heavens divine thunder was about to descend. The formless power of heaven and earth pressed down from the sky and enveloped the ancestor fiend celestial. However, he was not afraid at all and continued to charge towards the Nine Heavens platform. In a short span of 3 breaths, the lightning in the black clouds had accumulated to the maximum. With a thunderous boom, a dazzling pillar of lightning shot down from the black clouds, striking the ancestral fiend celestial. That lightning pillar was at least 10,000 feet long and as thick as a giant dragon. It was like a giant sword that cut through the dark sky. Chapter 1465. The power of the Nine Heavens divine lightning is so terrifying. It would be great if it could kill the ancestor fiend celestial. Ji Tianxing stood on a black mountain peak and stared at the lightning and the ancestor fiend celestial as he prayed silently in his heart. However, since the ancestor fiend celestial dared to barge into the Nine Heavens platform, he must have been prepared. When the nine heavens divine lightning struck down, his purple sword primordial spirit instantly expanded into a purple light that covered dozens of miles and floated in the sky. Boom! When an earth-shattering explosion sounded out, the terrifyingly powerful lightning beam blasted a huge hole in the purple light that filled the sky before exploding. The lightning beam dissipated and split into thousands of lightning arcs that covered the purple light. The purple light flashed rapidly for dozens of times. No one knew what secret technique it used, but it quickly dispersed the lightning arcs. Swoosh! The purple light within dozens of miles quickly gathered together and condensed into a purple sword primordial spirit that continued to fly towards the nine heavens platform. High in the sky, the pitch-black clouds churned violently and continued to brew the next bolt of lightning. Seeing this, Tianxing frowned and muttered doubtfully, "Damn it, the ancestor fiend celestial can indeed neutralize the nine heavens divine lightning. No wonder he dared to go straight to the nine heavens platform. However, he must have been severely injured after being struck by the lightning. Now is the best time to kill him." After making up his mind, he quickly crossed the mountain and flew over the pitch-black abyss, chasing after the ancestor fiend celestial. After about 3 breaths, the ancestor fiend celestial was very close to the nine heavens platform. He was only 15 miles away. At this moment, the second nine heavens divine lightning struck down from the black clouds. Kaboom! A deafening explosion occurred. The ancestor fiend celestial turned into a purple light that covered the sky and welcomed the lightning strike. The nine heavens divine lightning blasted a huge hole in the dazzling purple demonic light that covered dozens of miles and was once again covered by the dense lightning arcs. However, it seemed like nothing had happened. It condensed into a purple sword primordial spirit and flew into the nine heavens platform. Then, it released hundreds of purple light rays that formed a mysterious array seal and infused it into the white, jade-like nine heavens platform. It was clear that it was using some kind of secret technique to open up the space-time passageway in the nine heavens platform. Tianxing flew across the sky anxiously, heading straight for the nine heavens platform. However, a third bolt of lightning struck down from the dark clouds in the sky. Like a giant dragon, the pillar of lightning carried the power to destroy heaven and earth and blasted towards him. Boom! With a loud bang, Tianxing was struck by the divine lightning beam on the spot, and his figure was engulfed by the purple lightning. Fortunately, he had once used the nine heavens divine thunder to temper his body. His body had long been tempered to the extreme. His defense was extremely strong, and he could control the power of the divine thunder. When 1,000 feet tall lightning beams struck him, he hurriedly circulated his magic power and quickly devoured the power of the lightning. In just 2 breaths, he had devoured all the lightning arcs that covered the sky and stored them in his thunder god's eye. He appeared in the sky unscathed and continued to fly toward the nine heavens platform. When he was still 30 miles away from the nine heavens platform, the 4th bolt of divine lightning struck down from the clouds. Boom! The destructive lightning beam struck him again, and his figure was engulfed. The result was the same. He used the secret technique again and devoured the power of the divine lightning beam. He was also unscathed. The nine heavens platform was fair. When the ancestor fiend celestial entered the nine heavens platform, he was struck by 2 bolts of divine lightning. When he entered the nine heavens platform, he was also struck by divine lightning twice. However, it was these 2 bolts of divine lightning that had delayed his time. When he reached the nine heavens platform, the ancestor fiend celestial's secret technique had already been completed. The nine heavens platform, which was like a perfect unpolished jade, surged with purple light and condensed into 1,000 feet tall ancient door. This dark purple door looked ancient and mysterious. Seeing this scene, Tianxing was instantly filled with anxiety. He shouted angrily with a murderous aura, "Damn, fiend celestial, don't even think of escaping. Hand over your life." As he said that, he rushed towards the ancestor fiend celestial like a shooting star. He released a dozen golden swords and attacked the ancestor fiend celestial. However, the ancestor fiend celestial ignored him. When the ancient door appeared, he entered it without hesitation. Swoosh! With a flash of purple light, the ancestor fiend celestial disappeared into the door. Immediately after, the dozen golden swords released by Tianxing bombarded the Nine Heavens platform, and a series of muffled sounds erupted. After a breath's time, the dark purple ancient door started to flicker with light. Tianxing knew very well that the ancient door would not last for long and would dissipate soon. He only hesitated for a moment before he chased into the ancient door, and his figure disappeared instantly. Swoosh! With a flash of light, Tianxing left the Tianxian continent and entered another space. It was pitch black in all directions. It was a completely cold and pitch-black void. There was nothing in it. Only primordial soul realm experts could survive and move about in this void. Ordinary soul, refinement realm, ancient martial art practitioners would be frozen to death in this void. Their bodies would turn to dust, and their souls would shatter. Tianxing was not unfamiliar with this void. He had been here a few months ago. This was the crack in the sky, also known as the Gate of Xianpin. He raised his head to look at the void in front of him and saw a flash of dark purple light flying forward at lightning speed. It was the ancestor Fiend Celestial's primordial soul, purple sword. He was desperately flying towards the depths of the crack in the sky. Therefore, Tianxing hurriedly chased after him. The two of them flew in the void for 4 hours before they arrived near a huge ball of light. This huge ball of light, with a radius of 1,000 miles, rotated slowly. It was the topographic map of the entire world. When the ancestor Fiend Celestial and Tianxing passed by the ball of light and continued to fly forward, the pitch-black void lit up with a silver light that shot into the sky. The silver light that spanned 1,000 miles was like a huge screen of light that hung at the edge of the crack in the sky. The screen of light flowed slowly like water, and countless strange images appeared on it. Tianxing could tell at a glance that it was a low-leveled and backward continent. Its martial civilization was not as developed as the Tianxian continent. The ancestor Fiend Celestial naturally saw this as well, and he continued to fly desperately through the void. Tianxing chased after him relentlessly, but it was difficult for him to close the distance between them. He could only keep a distance of 50 miles behind the ancestor Fiend Celestial. Unknowingly, half a day had passed. The image on the silver-white light screen gradually changed to another continent. In these images, there were ancient beasts that reached the heavens and the earth, ancient and majestic cities in the clouds, as well as absolute powerhouses that looked down on all living beings. There were also many magnificent secret realms. There was no doubt that these were images of the Shenwu continent. The ancestor Fiend Celestial saw this and did not hesitate to fly towards the silver screen of light, entering one of the images with a whoosh. Purple Sword's primordial soul instantly disappeared, and the image also dispersed like a ripple before disappearing. A moment later, when the image reappeared, it was a completely different scene. Tianxing was filled with regret as he stopped and sighed with a complicated expression. Chapter 1466. Tianxing stopped in front of the huge silver light screen and looked at the images that were flowing slowly on the screen. A trace of regret appeared on his face. Although he really wanted to kill the ancestral demon god, he had already tried his best, but the demon god had still managed to escape. Furthermore, if the ancestral demon god had entered that image, it was very likely that he had entered Shenwu continent. He had to remain calm, as he could not follow the ancestral demon god into the screen. First, the image on the screen had already changed. Even if he followed it, he might not be able to find the ancestral demon god. Second, the chaos of the demons had just been resolved, and the situation in the Central Plains had not yet stabilized. He still had many things to do, and he could not leave the Tianxian continent for the time being. Thus, he could only look at the giant screen and sigh regretfully. Of course, he only felt regret and was not angry about it. At least the Tianxian continent was safe now, and the ancestral demon god could no longer massacre the people of various races and seek revenge on him or the emperor. After a long time, Ji Tianqing turned around and left. He flew through the void at lightning speed and returned to the entrance of the Sky Fissure. Half a day later, he passed through a door of light and left the Sky Fissure, returning to the Tianxian continent. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, he appeared on the Nine Heavens platform once more. It was already late at night, and the sky was covered in a thick layer of fog. The surface of the sea was very dark. He had fought a few battles and chased after the ancestral demon god for a few days, so he was completely exhausted. Thus, he sat cross-legged on the platform and silently circulated his energy to adjust his breathing. He used a secret technique to absorb the power of the platform and devoured the vast spiritual energy of the world to quickly recover his magic power. Unknowingly, a few hours passed. After daybreak, his magic power had recovered to its peak. Following that, he used the lightning drawing technique to stir up the dark clouds in the sky, causing streaks of divine lightning to strike down. He allowed the divine lightning to strike him as he greedily devoured its power and tempered his body, strengthening his physical strength and defense. After an entire day of cultivation, the divine lightning energy in his body had reached saturation, and his body had been tempered. Thus, he left the Nine Heavens platform and rode his flying sword back to the Central Plains. By the time Ji Tianqing returned to the Central Plains, 3 days had already passed. He flew over the Central Continent and looked down at the cities on the ground. He had a basic understanding of the situation in the Central Continent. 7 days had passed since the final battle. The news of the Demon Emperor's death, the annihilation of the demon race's army, and the ancestral demon god's escape had already spread like wildfire across the entire Central Plains. The martial artists and commoners of the Central State all learned of this news. 10 days ago, the people and warriors of the various cities were in a state of panic. They left their homes and fled to the south in order to avoid the disaster. Now that they had received news of the demon race's great defeat, everyone's spirits were lifted and they stopped running. The commoners were emotional and cheered enthusiastically. In the streets and alleys of every city, people were discussing this matter, constantly letting out all kinds of exclamations and shouts. After the news spread, the Central Plains was in a state of jubilation. The common people and martial artists of all races were celebrating. Of course, news of Ji Tianqing's deeds also spread throughout the Central State. Billions of people and martial practitioners were discussing his magnificent feat of killing the Devil Emperor and the miracle of severely injuring the ancestral Devil God. In the hearts of the common people, he was the great hero who had saved the Central State, the savior of the world. He was as powerful and dignified as a god. His martial strength and prestige even surpassed that of the human emperors. He attracted the fanatical worship of billions of martial artists. Billions of martial artists and commoners sang his praises and shed tears of gratitude. In short, the entire Central Plains was immersed in jubilation and excitement. On the evening of the 3rd day, Ji Tianqing received a message jade slip from the emperor. Therefore, he hurried to the sky-connecting mountain range and went to the imperial court to meet the emperor. Under the setting sun, the buildings and palaces of the imperial court were covered in a layer of golden light, looking very sacred and dignified. This place had not been affected by the flames of war. Everything was in its original state and had not been damaged. Ji Tianqing ascended the mountain range. When the imperial guard saw him, they respectfully knelt on the ground and bowed, revealing looks of worship. Under the lead of the imperial guard commander, he entered the imperial study of the palace of heaven and earth and met the emperor. The emperor was sitting in front of a wide purple jade table. He was engrossed in reviewing official documents and dealing with the major military affairs of the human race. His injuries had yet to recover. His face was still pale and tired. His aura was also weak. After all, his primordial spirit had been severely injured in the war. Without a few decades of recuperation, it would be impossible for him to recover. However, his mental state was good. He wore a golden dragon robe and a purple gold crown. He was as dignified as ever. Tianxing walked to the table and cupped his hands. He said, "Tianxing greets the Emperor." The Emperor hurriedly put down his brush and official documents. He looked at him with a smile and nodded slightly. "Tianxing, you are finally back. Sit down and talk." Tianxing did not pretend to be polite. He sat down on the white jade chair in front of him and asked calmly, "May I know why the Emperor has sent me a message?" The Emperor revealed a look of anticipation. He hurriedly asked, "Tianxing, how many days have you chased the ancestor fiend god? What is the result? Have you killed it?" Tianxing shook his head and said regretfully, "I chased it all the way to the eastern sea's bottomless ruins, but I was unable to kill it. It escaped the profound sky continent through the nine-heaven platform." Although the Emperor felt that it was a pity, he was not surprised. He nodded and said, "This is within my expectations. The ancestor fiend god is an ancient great demon god after all. It once struck fear into the hearts of all the gods in the world. Who knows how many heaven-defying abilities and methods it has? How could it be so easy to kill it? It was forced to leave the profound sky continent by you, which is a good thing. At least it will not be able to return to the continent and seek revenge on us." Tianxing nodded in agreement. The Emperor frowned and thought for a moment. He then asked, "Tianxing, do you know where the ancestor fiend god escaped to?" "Shenwu continent," Tianxing answered firmly. The Emperor revealed an as expected expression and said with a smile, "If the ancestor fiend god stays in the profound sky continent, it's almost impossible for it to recover to the ninth tribulation realm. Only by heading to Shenwu continent can it recover its peak strength and become a fiend god that surpasses all living beings. The profound sky continent is finally at peace. Tianxing, you are the greatest contributor. Even the Golden Dragon Emperor and the Heavenly Net Demon Emperor call you a savior. This emperor should give you the highest honor and the most generous reward. Tell me, what reward do you want? As long as the imperial court has it, you can choose whatever you want. This emperor will definitely not frown." Tianxing waved his hand and said with a smile, "The emperor is too polite. There's no need for a reward. We were able to obtain victory because of the soldiers of the three races. It was also because of the lives and blood of countless soldiers that we obtained this victory." Chapter 1467. What? You're here to say goodbye? The Emperor frowned and revealed a surprised expression. "Tianxing, are you leaving the Tianxian continent for the Shenwu continent?" Tianxing nodded. "Yes, I made up my mind a long time ago to leave the Tianxian continent to pursue a higher realm of martial arts and fulfill some of my wishes. Now that the chaos of the demons has been resolved, the continent is about to return to peace, and I can leave with peace of mind. My wife is on the Shenwu continent, and I'm going to find her. Furthermore, the ancestral demon god is also there. I'll think of a way to find it, and find an opportunity to kill it to prevent future troubles." The Emperor was silent for a moment before nodding. "Tianxing, I understand. It's only a matter of time before you head to the Shenwu continent. However, the war has just ended, so even if you want to leave, you don't have to be in such a hurry." Tianxing revealed a puzzled expression and asked, "Do you have any other concerns?" The Emperor shook his head gently. "I don't have any concerns. I just want to discuss the next step of the plan with you. News of the demon's defeat has just spread, and the commoners who fled to the south have stopped fleeing and are now returning to the central continent's 100 cities. I've been dealing with this matter for the past few days, and I also have to settle many of the displaced commoners. I estimate that it will take at least a few years for the central continent to recover and return to its former glory. Furthermore, I've already discussed this with the Golden Dragon Emperor and the Tianluo Demon Emperor. In a year's time, the three races will join forces to attack the northern desert and completely exterminate the demons." Tianxing listened carefully to the Emperor's words before nodding solemnly. As long as the demons are not exterminated, the continent will never be at peace. Now that the ancestral demon god has escaped, the demon emperor is dead, and many of the demon marshals and blood gods have been killed, there are no more top powerhouses to support us. The 30 million demons have all died in the central continent, and the demons left behind in the northern desert are mostly old, weak, and sick. The next few years will be the best time for the three races to attack the northern desert. If we don't completely exterminate the demons, a second demon emperor might appear in 1,000 years. After pausing for a moment, he continued, Emperor, let's carry out the plan you've discussed. Completely eradicate the demon race once and for all. Now that the demon race no longer has any top-notch experts, with you three supremes joining forces, the demon race will definitely be destroyed, and there is no need for me to help. Furthermore, I can't wait for a year. At most, I will have to leave the central province in 10 days. The emperor thought for a moment before reluctantly saying, Since you've made up your mind, I won't keep you any longer. When you leave the imperial court later, remember to greet Yin Xiao. After all, you'll probably never be able to return after you leave. In addition, this emperor will bring your father and the Ji family to live in the imperial court. I will take good care of your family. You don't have to worry about them. Ji Tianxing hurriedly cupped his hands and bowed. In that case, thank you very much, Your Majesty. The monarch thought for a moment and added, Oh right, after you return to Central State City, you must make a trip to the monarch mansion. Divine Teacher Blackfeather seems to be looking for you. I got it. Ji Tianxing nodded and bowed to the monarch. He said in a solemn tone, Monarch, Tianxing will bid farewell here. Farewell. The monarch stood up and nodded with a solemn expression. He said in a sincere tone, Tianxing, no matter what the other continent is like, no matter what you will encounter, you must take care of your body. Ji Tianxing remembered his words and turned to leave the study. After walking out of the palace of heaven and earth, he went to meet Long Yinxiao. The two chatted for a while. When Long Yinxiao learned that he was leaving the Tianxian continent, he felt rather emotional and regretful. However, he knew Ji Tianxing's nature well, so he didn't ask him to stay. He only reminded him. Then he took out a pot of good wine and drank 3 cups with Ji Tianxing to send him off. Tianxing, a cup of wine to thank you for getting to know me. 2 cups of wine to thank you for fighting side by side with me and resolving the danger. 1 last cup to wish you a smooth journey and to grow old together with Yin Yao. After 3 cups of wine, Ji Tianxing turned around and stepped into the sky. He flew away in the wind. Long Yinxiao stood at the top of the palace and looked at his figure disappearing into the horizon. His expression was rather lonely. After a while, he raised his head and drank the entire pot of wine. Then, he turned around and returned to the palace. Half a day later, Ji Tianxing returned to Central State City. Inside Central State City, there were traces of battle everywhere. The bloodstains on the northern city wall had yet to dry. The millions of corpses outside the city had yet to be cleaned up. Hundreds of thousands of human soldiers were still cleaning up the battlefield, repairing the city wall and the buildings in the city. The haze of war had already dissipated. Every day, large groups of civilians and martial artists returned to the city in high spirits and returned to their homes. Central State City gradually became lively, and at most a year, it would return to its former glory. Ji Tianxing flew over the city and headed straight for the monarch mansion. After entering the monarch mansion, he flew across the sky as fast as lightning and headed for Divine Teacher Blackfeather's palace. Inside the Blackfeather Palace, the simple and clean main hall was filled with a trace of cold air. The black-robed Divine Teacher Blackfeather was sitting alone in the main hall. He was meditating and healing his injuries expressionlessly. His injuries had yet to recover. He only had one right eye left. His left eye was still covered with a black eye patch. Ji Tianxing stepped into the hall and stopped in front of him. He cupped his hands and bowed. Greetings, great Divine Teacher. Divine Teacher Blackfeather immediately opened his eyes and nodded slightly. Tianxing, with your current strength, contributions, and achievements, you don't have to be so polite to this king. Sit down and talk. Ji Tianxing did not say anything. He quickly sat down cross-legged in front of him and asked, Great Divine Teacher, I heard that you have something to discuss with me. Divine Teacher Blackfeather nodded. His right eye revealed a solemn expression. He said in a solemn tone, Yes. Ever since the end of the war, this king has something to discuss with you. Moreover, this matter is related to the reputation and future of the monarch mansion. It is extremely important. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and asked, "What is it? Just say it." Divine Teacher Blackfeather said in a low and solemn tone, "As the saying goes, a country cannot go a day without a ruler, and a family cannot go a day without a leader. Although the monarch mansion is the holy land of martial arts in the Tianxian continent, it is not an exception. A new mansion master must be chosen as soon as possible. Ever since the mansion master passed away, a few divine teachers have also died in the battlefield. More than 20 princes have also sacrificed their lives. Now, the monarch mansion has lost more than half of its power. Its vitality has been greatly damaged. A few divine teachers and many princes have also lost their willpower. The only way is to choose a new mansion master. I have already discussed with a few divine teachers. Everyone has agreed that the position of mansion master belongs to you." Ji Tianqing suddenly frowned when he heard this news. He said with a troubled expression, "You called me here because you want me to succeed the position of mansion master?" Chapter 1468. Divine Mentor Blackfeather's tone was very certain and unquestionable. Ji Tianqing shook his head and rejected the offer. "Divine Mentor, I will not take over the position of prefecture master. You could discuss it again." "Why?" Divine Mentor Blackfeather frowned and asked, "In terms of strength, you are now the undisputed #1 powerhouse in the continent, and you are not any weaker than the prefecture master. In terms of prestige, you are the great hero who killed the demon king and heavily injured the ancestral demon god. You are the savior who saved the world. Furthermore, the prefecture master and the 3 seniors have passed on their skills and techniques to you. You should inherit the prefecture master's legacy and take over the position. Tianqing, can you bear to see the imperial residence decline?" Ji Tianqing shook his head again and explained, "Divine Mentor, although what you said makes sense, I cannot take over the position of prefecture master. In 10 days, I will leave the Tianxian continent and head to Xinwu continent to find my wife, deal with the ancestral demon god, and fulfill some of my wishes. I have more important things to do, and I cannot stay in the Tianxian continent and waste my time." Hearing that, God Sage He Yu fell silent. He had guessed that Ji Tianqing would head to another continent sooner or later. However, he had not expected this day to come so quickly. Ji Tianqing continued, "Furthermore, the imperial residence will not decline. This is the holy land of martial arts that nurtures the geniuses of the 3 races. There will always be new blood joining, and more powerhouses will be born. The imperial residence is the gathering place of geniuses and the cradle of powerhouses. It is not the imperial court that rules the 3 races, nor is it the overlord of the Tianxian continent. Once the demons are eliminated, the world will be at peace. The humans, demons, and water races will not threaten the imperial residence, and they will even support it. Even if the prefecture master is still alive and is the #1 powerhouse in the continent, he has never bullied or ruled the imperial court of the 3 races, right? Therefore, you do not need to worry." Divine Mentor Blackfeather frowned and pondered for a while. He was somewhat troubled. This but no buts. Ji Tianqing quickly waved his hand and said solemnly, "I will make the decision on behalf of my senior. You will inherit the position of prefecture master. In 10 days, I will leave the Central Plains and head to the Xinwu continent." God Teacher Blackfeather still wanted to persuade Ji Tianqing, but he was interrupted by Ji Tianqing. "Great Divine Master, I've already made up my mind. You don't have to say anything more. Summon a few God-tier masters to the Imperial Palace later. I want to announce this in person. Also, before I leave, I will treat your injuries. I'll impart to you my experience and insights on breaking through to the Essence Soul Realm. I hope it can help you break through to the Essence Soul Realm as soon as possible." Divine Master He Yu could no longer persuade him, so he could only acquiesce to his decision. "Tianqing, since you've decided to go to the Divine Item Continent, I have to remind you of something. I don't know if the Mansion Master has told you." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked in confusion, What's the matter? Divine Master Black Feather hesitated for a moment before saying in a low voice, "Ever since the Palace Master took over the Monarch Mansion, he rarely stayed in the Monarch Mansion for the past 800 years. Most of the time, the Mansion Master was nowhere to be seen. In the past, I didn't know where he went, but I later found out that he spent most of his time on the Shinwu continent." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and revealed an interested expression. "I also feel that this matter is a little strange. What is Senior Brother looking forward to going to the Shinwu continent?" Divine Master Black Feather explained, "I don't know the exact reason either. I've only learned a few things from the Mansion Master and some scattered information. On the Shinwu continent, the Mansion Master seems to be working for an absolute powerhouse, and he seems to be carrying out some sort of plan. Furthermore, in the past 800 years, the Monarch Mansion has produced two genius powerhouses who have reached the primordial soul realm, and they were both sent to the Shinwu continent by the Mansion Master." Upon hearing this, Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows and pondered silently for a moment. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. "Great Divine Master, are you saying that the Mansion Master is working for that absolute powerhouse and is helping that powerhouse gather martial geniuses? If not, how can the Mansion Master travel between the two continents freely? This is completely illogical." Divine Master Black Feather nodded. "Yes, that's what I think as well. I feel that there are many suspicious points in this matter. The Mansion Master is too mysterious, and I don't know much about him, much less his secrets. However, I can vaguely sense that the Mansion Master does not care much about the situation on the Tianxian continent. His goal and attention are all on the Shinwu continent." Ji Tianxing frowned and asked, "Great Divine Master, have you ever heard the Mansion Master mention which powerhouse he is working for? Or is he working for some power?" Divine Master Black Feather shook his head and replied with a blank expression, "The Mansion Master is very secretive about this matter and has never mentioned it. I have some doubts, which is why I'm discussing this matter with you. Furthermore, I have another question to consider. After you leave the Tianxian continent and I take over as the Mansion Master, what should I do? Do I have to work for that powerhouse? How do I contact that powerhouse? Furthermore, what is the purpose of the Monarch Mansion's existence? Why was it created?" Upon hearing these words, Ji Tianxing's body trembled violently. Many thoughts flashed through his mind, and the more he thought about it, the more terrified he became. He could vaguely sense that the Monarch Mansion's origins were very problematic. The Mansion Master and that powerhouse were probably playing a very big game of chess. He even began to worry about Yun Yao. Back then, the Mansion Master had personally promised him that Yun Yao would not be in any danger when she arrived on the Shinwu continent, and she would even be treated extremely well. He was willing to believe the Mansion Master's words, and he did not want to maliciously guess the Mansion Master's motives and goals. After all, the Mansion Master had been willing to sacrifice his own life to help Lu Yin increase his strength, and he had even imparted his lifetime's worth of cultivation to Lu Yin. Such a selfless sacrifice was something that Lu Yin would remember for the rest of his life, and he would be extremely grateful for it. Lu Yin did not believe that the Mansion Master had any malicious intentions. However, all of this was very strange and very mysterious. Lu Yin's fear and worry stemmed from his ignorance of the Mansion Master's plans, and he also did not know who the Mansion Master was working for. He did not know where Yun Yao was, and he did not know whether Yun Yao was safe, which was why he was so worried and anxious. After a long time, Lu Yin finally calmed down. He reminded Divine Master Black Feather, "Great Divine Master, after I head to the Shinwu continent, I will definitely investigate this matter thoroughly. You do not need to worry about this matter, and just focus on managing the Monarch Mansion. If that mysterious powerhouse needs you to work for him or do something for him, he will naturally contact you." Divine Master Black Feather thought for a moment and nodded. "It seems that we can only let nature take its course for now." Ji Tianxing gave him a few more instructions before he got up and left Black Feather Palace, rushing towards the Imperial Palace in the depths of the Monarch Mansion. The Imperial Palace was the Mansion Master's residence, and it was also the most sacred and hidden place in the Monarch Mansion. If the Mansion Master had left behind any information or clues, it would most likely be hidden in the imperial palace. Chapter 1469. Although the prefecture master had already passed away, there were still a dozen or so guards standing guard outside the palace. When Ji Tianxing arrived at the palace, the guards at both sides of the entrance hurriedly saluted him and opened the doors. Currently, he was the most respected person in the sovereign king manor by all the guards, princes, and priests. He was also the person that everyone had tacitly agreed to be the next prefecture master. He stepped into the main hall of the palace and waved his hand, closing the doors behind him. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the spacious and dim main hall, the walls on both sides immediately lit up with rows of bright lights. The bright golden light illuminated the entire hall, illuminating the ground and the vermilion and gold-painted pillars with golden light. Ji Tianxing circled the walls of the main hall and slowly walked around, carefully observing the diagrams and words on the walls. Although he had been to the palace a few times, he had never had the chance to carefully observe these things. After half an hour, he had finished observing the entire hall, but he did not find anything useful. The diagrams and words in the hall were the words of the humans, demons, water, and demons from thousands of years ago, and they had nothing to do with the Shenwu continent. He left the hall with some regret and walked deeper into the palace. Deep in the palace, there were dozens of empty rooms and secret rooms that were dimly lit and covered in dust. Ji Tianxing released his divine sense and carefully searched every room, looking for any useful clues or information. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. He had searched through more than 40 rooms, but he still did not find anything useful. He even searched the secret room where he had previously been in seclusion, but he still did not find anything. There was only one room left, and it was protected by a primordial spirit formation that he had not searched yet. He knew that this was the private room where the prefecture master lived and cultivated. Although the prefecture master did not spend much time in the Sovereign King Manor, every time he returned to the Sovereign King Manor, he would stay in that room. Thus, Ji Tianxing walked to the door of the room and used his arts to break through the formation. The defensive formation of this room had been personally set up by the prefecture master. He had inherited the prefecture master's absolute techniques and martial arts experience, so he naturally knew how to break through it. In less than an hour, he had broken through the formation and opened the stone door to the secret room. This secret chamber wasn't very big, only 100 feet in radius. The secret chamber was empty except for a futon made of top-grade spiritual jade in the middle of the empty space. In the corner of the secret room, there was a jade bed made of 10,000-year-old cold jade. In addition, there were many hidden compartments cut into the surrounding walls to store things. Ji Tianxing walked around the secret room and opened more than a dozen secret compartments to check the things inside. Most of the secret compartments stored some pills and array diagrams, as well as the fragments of bizarre magical equipment. Ji Tianxing picked out a few primordial soul-level divine pellets and stored them in his spatial ring for future use. In the last hidden compartment, he found an ancient gray book. This ancient book was very thick and heavy. The edges and pages were worn and curled. It was obvious that it had been flipped through often. His heart was filled with anticipation as he flipped through the ancient book. However, there were a few strange characters on the cover of the ancient book, which made him frown. He pondered for a while, but still couldn't recognize what those characters were. However, he was sure that those characters were not the characters of the human, demon, water, or demon races, nor were they the ancient seal characters. Could it be that these aren't the characters of the Tianxian continent? This thought flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind. His eyes suddenly focused, and his heart was filled with anticipation. He flipped open the ancient book and saw that the dark golden pages were filled with lines of small black characters. Those small characters were the same as the words on the cover. They were not the characters of the Tianxian continent. Ji Tianxing pondered for a long time, but still couldn't understand the meaning of these characters. Thus, he continued to flip through the pages. From the third page onwards, some scattered human characters appeared on the pages. Those lines of small characters were similar to annotations and instructions, distributed in the middle of the mysterious characters. Ji Tianxing immediately showed a hint of joy. He compared them with the human characters and learned to recognize the mysterious characters. Gradually, he was immersed in the ancient book and forgot about the passage of time. After an hour, he could already recognize more than 100 mysterious characters. At this point, he finally understood that the characters on this ancient book were not the characters of the Tianxian continent, but rather the common language of the Shenwu continent. It's actually the characters of the Shenwu continent. After the Battle of the Gods, the various continents were no longer connected to each other, so of course, the characters and languages would be different. The master hid this book in a secret room, added annotations and transliterations, and often flipped through it. It seems that he was also learning the characters of the Shenwu continent. Ji Tianxing muttered to himself as he seriously focused on flipping through the ancient book. He compared the master's annotations and continuously recognized the characters of the Shenwu continent. Unknowingly, 2 days passed. During these 2 days, he stayed in the secret room and read the ancient book from beginning to end twice. Relying on his highly retentive memory, he memorized the contents of more than 200 pages of paper without missing a single word. Furthermore, after repeatedly studying and studying, he could already recognize more than 1,000 of the Shenwu continent's characters. He could even imitate the sounds of the Shenwu continent's characters and say some simple and common phrases. This was not a small gain for him. At the very least, he now had a certain foundation. When he went to the Shenwu continent in the future, he would be able to quickly learn and grasp the Shenwu continent's language. Besides this, he had also discovered a mysterious clue. At the end of the ancient book, there was a mysterious imprint that was about the size of a fingernail. The imprint was oval-shaped, and there were more than 30 patterns on its edges. It looked like a garland of flowers or a coiling dragon. In the middle of the circle was a simple picture of a divine bird with a slender neck and soaring wings. This picture was somewhat abstract, and Ji Tianxing could not determine whether it was a picture of a divine bird or some strange symbol. In any case, this imprint was very special and mysterious, and it definitely contained some sort of meaning. Ji Tianxing pondered for a long time, but he still could not figure out the meaning of this imprint. He could only silently guess that this mysterious imprint was definitely related to the Shenwu continent. It could be a secret signal used by the master to communicate with the Shenwu continent, or it could be the symbol of that absolute powerhouse or some other power. Ji Tianxing memorized the appearance of this mysterious imprint without missing a single detail. He then placed the ancient book back into the secret compartment and turned to leave the secret room. Aside from the Shenwu continent's characters and the mysterious symbol, there were no other clues in the palace. Ji Tianxing memorized these things in his heart, and he would continue his investigation when he went to the Shenwu continent in the future. A moment later, he returned to the palace's main hall. Outside the sacred and dignified hall stood a few black-robed divine masters who were silently waiting. These 6 divine masters were led by Divine Master Blackfeather, and they were the few remaining powerhouses of the imperial household. Ji Tianxing asked the guards to open the door and lead the few god-tier masters into the main hall. Chapter 1470. After Ji Tianxing announced the news, the matter of the Imperial Monarch Manor was resolved. After Divine Master He Yu became the Manor Lord, the situation of the Imperial Monarch Manor would be out of Lu Yin's control. He dismissed the 5 Divine Masters, leaving only Divine Master He Yu in the hall. Lu Yin then brought Divine Master He Yu to a secret room to heal his injuries and pass on his experience of breaking through to the primordial spirit realm. This matter delayed Ji Tianxing for a few more days. By the time he walked out of the secret room, 5 days had already passed. Divine Master He Yu remained in the secret room and continued to heal his injuries while comprehending Lu Yin's cultivation experience and insights. Ji Tianxing left the Imperial Monarch Manor and flew south at lightning speed, rushing towards the Tianxian region. He would be leaving in a few days, and he did not know when they would meet again after this parting. Before he left, he naturally had to visit his father, Master Chu Tianshang, Old Man Xiang Wuji, and the people of the Sky Pillar sect. At the very least, he had to say goodbye to his father and elders. With his current strength, he was unparalleled in the Tianxian continent. From Zhongzhou City to the Tianxian region, he only needed 1 day to arrive. After reaching the Tianxian region, he first went to the domain chief's manor to visit his father and the Ji family. When Ji Changkong learned that Lu Yin was leaving the Tianxian continent, he was naturally very reluctant and worried. However, he also knew that Ji Tianxing had a reason to go to the Xinwu continent. Thus, he could only express his support for Ji Tianxing's decision and carefully advise him. In any case, the imperial court would soon send someone to pick him up and let him settle down there. There was no need to worry about his safety in the future. After leaving the domain chief's manor, Ji Tianxing went to the Sky Pillars sect to bid farewell to Chu Tiansheng, Xiang Wuji, and the others. Everyone chatted for a long time. Chu Tiansheng, Xiang Wuji, and the others were filled with emotion and reluctance. However, no one tried to persuade him to stay, and they all sincerely wished him well. After this matter was over, Ji Tianxing no longer had any worries and returned to Zhongzhou with peace of mind. Very quickly, 10 days passed. Finally, the day Ji Tianxing had to leave arrived. Central Continent City was flooded with people, bustling with noise and excitement. As early as a few days ago, the news of Ji Tianxing leaving had already spread throughout Central Continent City. Early in the morning, there were hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians who spontaneously sent Ji Tianxing off. Everyone gathered outside the Forest of Divine Steels and lined up along the main road, all the way to the city square. Countless people looked in the direction of the imperial residence, waiting for Ji Tianxing to appear. They discussed with reluctance. At the exit of the monarch mansion, there were dozens of honorable experts who had specially come to see Ji Tianxing off. The Emperor, the Golden Dragon Emperor, and the Heavenly Net Demon Emperor were the leaders of the group. Behind the three supremes were Long Yanxiao, Kuan Wu, Ji Ku, and Tai Yi, as well as Xiao Han, Yun Zhongqi, Divine Dr. Bailey, Fox Princess, and Ling Yichen. Everyone's expressions and emotions were very complicated. Ji Ku, in particular, was the most upset. Today, she wore a fiery red dress that trailed on the ground and a luxurious jade crown with a Luan phoenix on her head. Her entire body exuded a noble aura. However, there were tears in her clear eyes, and her eyes were slightly red. She had not seen Ji Tianxing for more than a year since the outbreak of the demon race's chaos. She never would have thought that when she saw Ji Tianxing again, it would be the time to send him off. A moment later, when the exit of the monarch mansion opened and Ji Tianxing walked out first, everyone looked in his direction. He walked toward the crowd, followed by He Yu, a few divine sages, and many princes. The countless soldiers and civilians near the Forest of Divine Steels immediately bowed to Ji Tianxing, saying words of farewell and well wishes. For a moment, the Forest of Divine Steels was bustling with noise. Ji Tianxing walked in front of the Emperor and the others and stood still. He raised his hand slightly, indicating for everyone to quiet down. Then he bowed to the Emperor, Golden Dragon Emperor, and the others and said goodbye with a smile. Long Yanxiao, Kuan Wu, Tai Yi, Ji Ku, and the others all went up to him and chatted with him. The three princes could still maintain their smiles and spoke with confidence. The three of them sincerely wished Ji Tianxing a safe journey and that he would be able to reach the pinnacle of the other continent and achieve glory again. Ji Tianxing returned their greetings one by one to express his gratitude. Then he walked in front of Ji Ku. He and Ji Ku stood face to face. Their eyes met and they both fell silent. Ji Ku looked at him affectionately. Her thin lips were slightly pursed and tears welled up in her eyes. Ji Tianxing revealed a smile and reached out to wipe away the tears at the corner of her eyes. He said gently, "So many people are watching. Don't cry. It will damage the dignity of the demon race's princess." Ji Ku pouted and muttered softly, "I don't care. I haven't seen you for more than a year, and you're leaving as soon as we meet. I just want to look at you a few more times and remember your face forever so that I won't forget you in the future." Ji Tianxing revealed an apologetic smile and explained, "Cuckoo, there's bound to be a time of meeting and parting. I can't stay in the profound sky continent. I will have to leave eventually. Ku pursed her lips and asked softly, Big Brother Tianxing, can you take me with you? I'm afraid not. Tianxing shook his head and explained through voice transmission that space-time tunnel can only be entered by those of the primordial soul realm. The anticipation in Ku's eyes instantly disappeared and was replaced by disappointment. She nodded silently and looked at Tianxing with a determined gaze. She said firmly and persistently, Big Brother Tianxing, when you go there, you must take care of yourself and be careful. Primordial soul realm. I will work hard to cultivate. Big Brother Tianxing, I will come to find you very soon. Tianxing smiled and nodded. All right, if you reach the primordial soul realm in the future and don't want to be the empress of the demonkin, then come to the Shenwu continent to find me. Ku thought for a moment and then added, Big Brother Tianxing, you must keep your word and remember our agreement. You must wait for me. If it takes too long and you're already gone by the time I reach the Shenwu continent, I will hate you for the rest of my life. Tianxing smiled and nodded. He bid farewell to her and continued walking forward. As he walked out of the forest of divine steels, everyone bowed to him and sent him off with their best wishes. He nodded to the crowd and only stopped when he reached a wide road. Everyone, thank you for sending me off, and thank you for your well wishes. Tianxing, farewell. If there is a chance in this life, let us meet again. Tianxing calmly looked at the crowd and bowed. He then turned around and stepped into the sky, his clothes fluttering as he flew east. Everyone near the forest of divine steels looked up at the sky and watched his figure disappear over the horizon. It was a long time before they looked away. Ku was also stunned for a long time, and 2 sparkling tears silently fell from her eyes. Big Brother Tianxing, I will definitely come find you. Wait for me. Chapter 1471. His long sleeves fluttered the wind and clouds as he strode through the meteors. Tianxing's robes fluttered as he left the central continent and flew towards the eastern sea like a streak of light. He was traveling alone, and the only people who accompanied him to Shenwu continent were the Black Dragon, Qianyu, Ancestor Triune, and the Jinshan King. Everyone was in the world within the burial of Heaven's Sword, quietly recovering from their injuries and recovering their strength. After a short 3 days, Tianxing returned to the 9 Heavens platform in the Eastern Sea sinkhole. He crossed the majestic black mountain and flew over the pitch-black abyss, heading straight for the 9 Heavens platform. Black clouds surged in the sky as thunder rumbled and lightning flashed. Kaboom! Following an earth-shattering explosion, a 1,000-meter-tall pillar of lightning smashed down, ruthlessly striking him. However, he was not injured at all, and he continued to fly towards the 9 Heavens platform after absorbing the power of the 9 Heavens thunder. After a few breaths of time, a second pillar of lightning struck him and engulfed him. He was still uninjured, and after absorbing the power of the thunder, he smoothly ascended the 9 Heavens platform. The platform was like a perfect piece of unpolished jade that flickered with a bright white light and emitted a divine aura. Tianxing stood at the center of the platform with a solemn expression as he waved his palms and used the lightning attraction technique to draw in the divine power of thunder from the heavens and earth. When he formed a seal with both hands and successfully released the lightning attraction technique, the heavens and earth within a few hundred kilometers of him immediately changed. Strong winds blew around the 9 Heavens platform, and the black clouds in the sky churned violently. Within the pitch-black clouds, purple arcs of lightning flickered and quickly gathered to form a giant pillar of lightning. Kaboom! A 1,000-meter-tall pillar of lightning struck down from the sky and struck towards Tianxing. Tianxing formed a seal with both hands and guided the pillar of lightning to strike the 9 Heavens platform with a loud rumble. At that moment, the berserk power of thunder surged into the 9 Heavens platform like a tidal wave. The lightning split into tens of thousands of purple arcs that quickly spread out on the ground, forming dense patterns and lines. In just a few breaths of time, The jade ground within a 5-kilometer radius was covered in purple lightning patterns. The divine formation hidden in the Nine Heavens platform was activated. Chua, a large gate formed from purple lightning appeared in the middle of the Nine Heavens platform. This divine lightning gate was 30 meters tall and 30 meters wide. Its entire body was dazzling purple. Purple lightning coiled around the gate frame and lintel like dragons and snakes swimming around. Inside the door was a mysterious purple vortex. Ji Tianxing knew that the divine gate of thunder could only last for 2 breaths of time. Once he passed through the vortex, he would be able to enter the sky fissure. He took one last look at the surrounding sea before turning around and stepping into the divine thunderbolt gate. Shua! In the next moment, he saw a flash of light in front of his eyes, and then he entered a pitch-black space. This pitch-black and icy void was the crack in the sky, which was also known as the Xianpin Gate. Ji Tianxing skimmed through the void with ease and flew into the darkness ahead. Not long after, he flew to the vicinity of the huge ball of light that was as bright as the moon. The gigantic ball of light, which was 1,000 kilometers wide, slowly rotated as usual and emitted a dazzling brilliance. Ji Tianxing did not stop. After passing through the ball of light, he continued to fly into the depths of the void. At that moment, the edges of the sky fissure suddenly lit up with a dazzling silver light. The silver light was 1,000 kilometers tall, and it was like a huge screen of light that clearly displayed various scenes. The images were clear and lifelike, and the silver light flowed like water, causing the images to constantly change. Ji Tianxing stared at the images and observed them for a while. He could tell that they were images of an ordinary continent, and the martial arts civilization was even more backward than the Tianxian continent. He continued to fly through the void, and after flying for half a day, he finally saw the image of the Xinwu continent appear on the screen. In the huge and clear image, there were ancient and majestic cities that towered atop mountains. They had a dignified aura and seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of life. There were indomitable ancient beasts that stepped on mountains and rivers, and they fought against the wind and thunder, releasing destructive power. There were also martial arts powerhouses that stood above all living beings. They could summon clouds and rain with a flip of their hands, and they could use great divine abilities to summon the wind and rain, move mountains, and fill seas. Ji Tianxing stared at the slowly moving images on the screen and frowned as he fell into deep thought. When I first met Jiao here, she told me that the Xinwu continent has 3 divine kingdoms, and each of them is ruled by a martial god. He wondered where Yao Yao had been sent to by the prefecture lord. Which divine kingdom is she in? If I pass through the images on the screen, will I arrive at the corresponding region? He was very unfamiliar with Xianpin Gate and the Xinwu continent, and he did not know Yuan Yao's location or any information about her. Many questions surfaced in his mind. After silently observing for a long time, he saw a huge and majestic city appear on the screen. He then leaped into the image. Whoosh! There was a flash of brilliance, and his figure passed through the image and disappeared. The image also spread out like a ripple and quickly dissipated. Ji Tianxing only saw a flash of brilliance in front of his eyes before he left the pitch-black and icy void and entered a warm world. Whoosh! He appeared out of thin air on a large road made of black stone. His eyes blinked a few times before they gradually adjusted to the bright light and allowed him to clearly see his surroundings. 3,000 meters behind him was the end of the road, where there was a towering city gate that was 60 meters tall. Below the city gate, there were over 100 black-armored city guards standing guard. They had a dignified lineup, and their bodies emitted a cold and austere aura. The commoners who entered and exited the city were lined up in order to be inspected by the city guards. On both sides of the city gate were tall and majestic dark brown walls that extended to the east and west. They were at least 50 kilometers long. There was no doubt that this was the majestic city that he had seen on the screen. It was built on the peak of a towering mountain, and it was both ancient and mysterious. It seems that I didn't guess wrong. I'll arrive at the corresponding region by passing through the image on the screen. Ji Tianxing muttered to himself as he continued to observe his surroundings. On the Black Stone Road, there were many strangely dressed martial artists and commoners. They walked in groups of 3 to 5 as they conversed in a special language. These people's physiques and facial features were very similar to the humans of the Tianxian continent. However, upon closer inspection, one could still see the differences. On the other hand, Ji Tianxing's attire seemed out of place when compared to the commoners. It was rather strange. Many people who passed by him would give him a few more glances, casting curious and doubtful gazes at him. Ji Tianxing silently listened to the conversations of these people, and he quickly realized that they were speaking the language of the Shenwu continent. Furthermore, he could occasionally understand some words and roughly understand the meaning of certain words. He walked along the Black Stone Road and walked towards the center of the city at a leisurely pace. He calmly observed his surroundings as he gradually gained a better understanding of this ancient city. He wanted to find Yunyao as soon as possible. Chapter 1472. Ji Tianxing spent an entire day walking around the ancient city. In the process, he not only observed the layout of the city and its customs, but also learned a lot of information. Before coming to Shenwu continent, he had learned thousands of Shenwu continent's languages from the master's ancient book, which allowed him to speak a few simple and common languages. Now that he was in this city, he could see the words written all over the city and listen to the conversations of the commoners. Comparing the two, he was able to learn and improve even faster. According to his understanding, this ancient city was called Heavenly Cloud City. Heavenly Cloud City had a history of more than 1,000 years and covered an area of more than 200 kilometers. It was home to more than 3 million people. This was the imperial city of the Outcloud Empire, which was also the territory ruled by martial god Tai Hao. When he learned this, Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment, and a playful look flashed through his eyes. Jiao seems to be from the divine kingdom of Tai Hao, and she worships and respects martial god Tai Hao greatly. I never thought that I would accidentally land in the divine kingdom of Tai Hao's territory. As this thought flashed through his mind, he thought of another question. I originally thought that the divine kingdom of Tai Hao was just a single nation, but I didn't expect that to be the case. There are actually 6 empires under the divine kingdom of Tai Hao, and the Outcloud Empire is one of them. After some investigation, he found out that the empires under the divine kingdom of Tai Hao were different from the kingdoms on the Tianxian continent. Every empire had a vast and boundless territory, as well as an endless number of civilians and subjects. On this continent that was enveloped by divine light, the world's spiritual energy was incomparably dense, and the martial arts culture was very prosperous. Just like Heavenly Cloud City, the commoners who grew up here were all martial artists who had started cultivating from a young age. The commoners who walked the streets and alleys, as well as the hawking peddlers, were all martial artists with decent strength. Ji Tianxing walked around the city and found that most of the people here were at least at the Tongxian realm or the Primal Core realm. Sky Origin Stage cultivators could only be considered as good cultivators in this place. They could be the city guards or the guards of the rich and powerful clans. Spirit Refinement realm martial artists were not rare either, and only primordial spirits could be considered powerhouses. Ji Tianxing even sensed that there were dozens of hidden but powerful auras in the city that far surpassed the primordial spirit realm. In addition to this information, he also noticed something else. In the city square, as well as on the archways of several streets, there were dark golden imperial notices posted on them. The imperial notice was filled with words written in the Shenwu continent's language. It was an order personally written by Emperor Chu Yun, and it seemed to be an extremely solemn announcement. Many people gathered around the imperial board to watch. They gathered in groups of 3 to 5 and discussed. Ji Tianxing passed by a large street and walked past a tall stone tablet. He saw countless people surrounding the stone tablet so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. He could not help but take a few more glances. From the discussions of the people, he heard the words disciple of God, grand competition, genius, and selection. These words immediately piqued his interest. He stopped in his tracks, passed through the crowd, and walked down the stone tablet. When he arrived at the stone stele, he raised his head to look at the dark gold imperial ranking list and read the words on it carefully. It took him 100 breaths of time to decipher the 200 characters and understand their meaning. It turned out that the Chuyan Empire was holding a disciple of God selection for the great martial god Taihao to select the most outstanding disciple. The disciple of God selection was held once every 20 years, and it was one of the most solemn ceremonies in the Taihao kingdom. Any martial artist between the ages of 20 and 80 who had reached the 6th level of the spirit refining realm or above had the qualifications to participate. At the very beginning, more than 200 cities under the Chuyan Empire jurisdiction would hold the first round of selections. The thousands of young martial artists who had won would come to the imperial city, Heavenly Cloud City, to participate in the second round of selections and competitions. After a few days of competition, thousands of martial artists had been eliminated, and only 15 young geniuses had stood out and won. These 15 geniuses' names were written on the imperial board, and they were admired and praised by the entire city. They would represent the Chuyan Empire and head to the sacred Clear Sky Pagoda to participate in the final selection. Anyone who could become a disciple of God would receive unparalleled glory. They would be bathed in the divine light of martial god Taihao, and they would have a meteoric rise. Their future on the martial path would be limitless. Even if they couldn't become a disciple of God, they could still become a divine servant of the divine kingdom. Their status would far surpass that of ordinary nobles, and they would be very famous. All in all, the 15 geniuses on the imperial ranking list were going to become famous figures in the world. However, in 3 days, the 15 geniuses on the imperial board would have a final competition. They were going to hold a ranking battle in the plaza in the city to determine their respective rankings. Obviously, whoever was stronger would be able to obtain a higher ranking, receive better treatment, and have a more resounding reputation. After reading the news on the imperial board, Ji Tianxing silently left the crowd and stood in a corner to ponder. It's really about the disciple of God's selection. Jiujio mentioned this to me before. When she was rushing to the Clear Sky Pagoda, she accidentally entered the gate of Xianpin and met me. Unexpectedly, 10 months have passed, and the disciple of God's selection is about to come to an end. The Chuyan Empire has already selected 15 geniuses. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but frown as many thoughts flashed through his mind. The disciple of God's selection is a grand ceremony that occurs once every 20 years. Previously, when the prefecture master brought Yun Yao to the Shenwu continent, he gave her a 1-year deadline. Now that I think about it, the prefecture master sent Yun Yao to the Shenwu continent 3 months ago when the disciple of God's selection was about to begin. Could it be that the prefecture master was in a hurry to send Yun Yao here because of the disciple of God's selection? Could Yun Yao also be in the Taihao Divine Kingdom? Could the mysterious powerhouse that the prefecture master is working for be martial god Taihao? Although these were all his guesses, he didn't have much evidence. However, after weighing the pros and cons for a while, he felt that it was possible. Anyway, I've just arrived in the Shenwu continent and have no place to stay. I also don't understand the situation on this continent. Even if I want to find Yao Yao, I don't know where to start. In that case, I'll take advantage of this disciple of God's selection to find a way to enter the Clear Sky Pagoda. I have to investigate clearly to see if Yao Yao is there. Even if I can't find Yao Yao, I can ask Jiujio for help. On this continent, I only know one person, Jiujio, and she could be considered friend. She seems to be from a wealthy family. If she's willing to help me find Yao Yao, it will definitely save me a lot of trouble and time. Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing made up his mind. He would start from the ranking battle 3 days later and find a way to enter the Clear Sky Pagoda. Of course, what he needed to do now was to find out the relevant information about the ranking battle and investigate the identity and strength of the 15 geniuses. Chapter 1473. For 3 whole days, Ji Tianxing busied himself in Sky Cloud City, not resting at all. With his extraordinary intelligence and comprehension, he quickly learned the Shenwu continent's language and tried his best to find out more information. In just 3 days, he had a deeper understanding of the Outcloud Empire and Skycloud City. At the same time, he had also investigated the identity and strength of the 15 young geniuses. He also had a corresponding understanding of the upcoming ranking battles. After all, the ranking battles were no secret. The 15 young geniuses were well-known figures in the Outcloud Empire. Although young warriors of the right age could participate in the God-Disciple selection as long as they reached level 6 of the Spirit Refinement realm or above. However, the 15 geniuses had stood out from thousands of other young warriors. They were all young powerhouses with extraordinary talent and strength. They had all reached the primordial spirit realm, and even the weakest was at the 2nd level. And the 3 strongest geniuses had reached the 5th firmament essence spirit realm. When Ji Tianqing found out about this, he was shocked and surprised. He could not believe that the 15 young geniuses had broken through to the primordial spirit realm in just a few decades. If this were the Tianxian continent, they would definitely be peerless geniuses that only appeared once in 1,000 years. Aside from him, no one else had reached the primordial spirit realm in 100 years. Even the youngest primordial spirit powerhouse had to cultivate for a few hundred years. From this, it could be seen that the Xinwu continent was indeed a continent shrouded in divine light. Martial arts flourished, the world's spiritual energy was extremely dense, and cultivation resources were abundant. Compared to the Xinwu continent, the Tianxian continent was too backward. Soon, the 4th day arrived. The ranking battles were about to begin, and Ji Tianqing's opportunity had arrived. Early in the morning, Skycloud City was bustling with noise and excitement. Hundreds of thousands of citizens flooded the city's plaza to watch the ranking battles. Every citizen was filled with anticipation and excitement as they whispered to each other about the 15 geniuses. Ji Tianqing followed the crowd and arrived at the city's plaza. The huge square with a radius of more than 10 miles was densely packed with people. At a glance, it was a sea of people. There were many guards in black armor around the plaza, all of them wielding swords and standing guard. This was the imperial city, where the laws were strict and the commoners abided by the rules. Even if more than 600,000 people were gathered in the square, and the noise was like a tsunami, there would not be any accidents or disturbances. In the middle of the square, there was a white circular stone platform floating in the air 1,000 feet above the ground. That stone platform had a radius of 10 miles. It was made of a special material and had a powerful defense. It served as the arena for the ranking battles. Several extremely powerful formations supported the arena with an invisible force, allowing it to float in the air as stable as Mount Tai. The hundreds of thousands of people in the square were all looking up at the huge arena. Their faces were filled with anticipation as they discussed enthusiastically. Not long after, several young experts in different attire flew over the heads of the commoners and landed in the empty area below the arena. There were a total of 7 young experts, 5 men and 2 women. All of them had strength at the Essence Soul realm. There was a 2-meter-tall brawny man wearing a solemn-looking armor. His face was dignified, and his whole body was emitting a cold aura. There was also a skinny, fair-skinned youth wearing a fiery red long robe. His sleeves and hair were decorated with decorations, making him look rather energetic. There was also a dark-skinned, middle-aged man wearing tight leather armor and a leather jacket. There were a few copper chains around his body, giving him a fierce aura. In short, these people were of different ages, appearances, and attire. They all had their own personalities and left a deep impression. When the commoners in the square saw the arrival of the 7 young experts, they immediately erupted into enthusiastic cheers. Many of the excited commoners were even cheering the names of the geniuses, cheering them on. Clearly, these 7 people were the young geniuses who were about to participate in the ranking battles. Ji Tianqing stood quietly in the crowd as he swept his indifferent gaze across the 7 people. After a few glances, he lost interest. After all, these 7 people were between the 2nd and 4th tier of the Essence Soul realm. He had no interest in them. As time passed, streams of light streaked across the sky and landed below the arena in the middle of the square. Young geniuses arrived one after another, inciting cheers and shouts from the commoners. Ji Tianxing would take a few glances at every young genius that arrived and compare them with the information he had gathered to confirm their identities. Finally, the 13th young genius arrived. He was a bald, brawny man who was more than 2 meters tall. His body was as black as iron, and his aura was extremely cold. He wore a black leather vest and a pair of black shorts. On the outside, he wore a wide black cloak. There was a picture embroidered on the cloak. It was a ferocious dragon baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. His squarish and dark face was filled with coldness and indifference. His bell-sized eyes flickered with a sharp aura, and his entire body was shrouded in cold, killing intent. When Ji Tianxing saw his appearance, he muttered to himself, "Kuang Long, a martial artist who has been at the 5th tier of the Essence Soul realm for 67 years. He has a cold and ruthless personality and is one of the top 3 geniuses." Indeed, when Kuang Long appeared in the middle of the square, countless commoners shouted his name in excitement. "Kuang Long! Look, Kuang Long is here! Ha ha ha! I have finally seen Kuang Long's true face." It is said that Kuang Long is the 2nd genius of our Chu Yuan Empire. It is a pity that we have not been able to verify this. Today, he is going to compete with Wu Quebec. We will soon know who is stronger. The discussions in the square continued for a long time. Everyone's eyes were focused on Kuang Long. Only when a white lightning bolt streaked across the sky and appeared in the middle of the square did the crowd stop their discussions. Swoosh! The white lightning dissipated, and a young man dressed in a long, snow-white robe appeared below the arena. He had a delicate figure and fair skin. This person's height was similar to Ji Tianxing's. However, he was slim and his skin was as fair as jade. His face was delicate and beautiful. What left the deepest impression was that he had not only put on makeup, but he was also holding a jade umbrella that was half black and half white. His movements were graceful and charming. If one did not observe carefully, one would think that this was a beautiful woman in her prime. However, Ji Tianxing sized him up indifferently. He muttered to himself, Wu Ke, the 2nd genius of the Chu Yuan Empire. He has been at the 5th tier of the Essence Soul realm for 60 years. That strange black and white jade umbrella in his hand is the treasure that made him famous, the Yang umbrella. Many commoners in the square stared at Wu Ke, who had just arrived. They began to discuss him excitedly. Wu Ke ignored everyone in the square. He turned his head to look at Kuang Long and greeted him with a smile. "Kuang Long, be careful of your head. I will not go easy on you later." Chapter 1474. Wu's features were too distinct, and everyone had an unforgettable memory. What was strange was that his feminine and charming demeanor and actions did not seem pretentious at all. Instead, they matched his aura very well. The surrounding geniuses all looked at Wu and Kuang Long with complicated expressions and playful gazes. Kuang Long slowly turned his head and coldly glanced at Wu. His tone was cold and murderous as he said, "Hermaphrodite, I will personally break your neck." When he said this, his expression was not ferocious, but rather, it was as if he was stating a fact. However, the surrounding geniuses all felt a sharp and cold aura, and they could not help but shiver. Just as Kuang Long and Wu were facing off against each other and secretly competing with their auras, another dazzling ray of light flew over from the distant sky. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the dazzling ray of light landed below the arena, revealing a tall woman in a blue dress. This woman's height was similar to Ji Tianxing's, and her figure was graceful and alluring. Her luxurious, ice blue dress was decorated with a few icicle flower patterns and dozens of sparkling icicle blue feather diamonds. Tassels were embroidered on her collar and sleeves. Her long, grayish-white hair was tied up with a simple silver ribbon, and it flowed down her back all the way to her waist. Her face was fair and beautiful, and her clear, large eyes flickered with a cold and deep splendor. Regardless of whether it was the Xinwu continent's aesthetic standards or Ji Tianxing's own, she was an absolute beauty with an icy temperament that was both noble and cold. When she appeared, the gazes of the hundreds of thousands of people in the plaza all gathered on her, unable to take their eyes off her. The surrounding geniuses also revealed looks of reverence as they stared at her. She expressionlessly glanced at Kuang Long and Wu Kei, then said with a cold and emotionless tone, "No matter how much you fight, you are just two pieces of trash." What an arrogant woman! Kuang Long and Yin Wuk were extremely famous in the Outcloud Empire, and they were the top 3 martial geniuses of the younger generation. However, this blue-dressed woman did not place them in her eyes at all, and she even dared to look down on them right in front of them. However, even though Kuang Long and Wu Kei were furious and embarrassed, they didn't dare to show it on the surface. Both of them suppressed their anger, sneered, and retorted with neither light nor heavy words. "Oomph." Lan Yiqing, the ranking battle hasn't started yet. It's still unknown who will win. You have yet to break through to the 6th level of the primordial soul realm. Were you so proud of? However, their counterattack seemed somewhat powerless. Lan Yiqing didn't care at all. He didn't look at the two of them anymore. He stood there expressionlessly, waiting for the ranking battle to begin. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing stared at Lan Yiqing seriously, sizing him up. Lan Yiqing, the undisputed #1 youth genius. He has cultivated for 40 years and has reached the 5th Firmament Essence Soul Realm. He is about to break through to the 6th Firmament Essence Soul Realm. It's said that this woman has a mysterious background. Many nobles in the Chu Yuan Empire don't dare to offend her. He murmured in his heart as he quietly observed Lan Yiqing's mannerisms. He wanted to know her strength and background. To Ji Tianqing, the 12 ordinary geniuses were no threat at all. Only Wu Kei, Kuang Long, and Lan Yiqing were worthy of his attention. Among the 3 of them, Lan Yiqing was the strongest. Her background was the most mysterious, and she was his #1 opponent. In the Tianxian continent, with my strength at the 4th Firmament Essence Soul Realm, I can fight against the 6th or 7th Firmament Essence Soul Realm cultivator. However, in the Xinwu continent, there are many geniuses. The martial way is also very diverse. Lan Yiqing and the other two's auras are much stronger than mine. Ji Tianqing pondered silently. His eyes grew more serious and cautious. At this moment, a 7-colored, auspicious cloud was flying over from the northwest of the square. On the rainbow cloud, which was about 10 feet wide, stood 10 middle-aged cultivators. They were dressed in luxurious clothes and had powerful auras. The leader was a tall and burly middle-aged man with a dignified appearance. He wore a dark golden robe with the sun, moon, stars, and divine dragons embroidered on it. The edges of his robe and sleeves were lined with gold. He wore an exquisite crown on his head. He stood tall and straight on the cloud as he looked ahead expressionlessly. His body exuded a majestic aura, as if he could control the heavens and earth. He was as powerful as a god. Ji Tianqing's gaze was immediately attracted to this person. He felt that this person's strength was unfathomable. He had reached an extremely terrifying realm. At the same time, the hundreds of thousands of citizens in the plaza bowed respectfully. "Welcome, Sage Emperor." Everyone shouted in unison. The sound waves gathered into an invisible torrent that resounded throughout the entire heavenly cloud city. Ji Tianqing immediately understood. The godlike golden robe man was Emperor Chu Yuan, a martial sage expert. A martial sage was an expert above the 9th tribulation realm. After transcending the 9th tribulation, one could escape the cycle of reincarnation, transcend mortality, become immortal, and control the heavens and earth. They were martial sages. Before this, Ji Tianqing had only heard that there were 9th tribulation and martial sages above the Essence Soul realm. However, he had never seen them before. Now, he finally saw a true martial sage expert. He was immediately subdued by Emperor Chu Yun's sacred aura. Envy and yearning grew in his heart. When can I reach his level? Stand proudly on the clouds, look down on all living beings in the world, and summon clouds and rain with a flip of my hand? Behind Emperor Chu Yun stood a white-haired elder in a purple robe. He held a dark golden scroll in his left hand and a large black brush in his right. This elder's clothes fluttered in the wind. He looked ordinary on the surface, but his aura was restrained and merged with the heavens and earth. Ji Tianxing could sense that this elder's strength had also reached the martial sage realm. However, the elder was slightly weaker than Emperor Chu Yun. His aura did not appear sacred and majestic. He had the aura of an otherworldly expert. He immediately guessed that this purple-robed elder was most likely the sage master of the Chu Yun Empire. He was a sage who assisted Emperor Chu Yun in governing the empire. Apart from Emperor Chu Yun and the Sage Master, there were 8 other experts standing on the auspicious cloud. The 8 of them had clearly not reached the martial sage realm, but they were dozens of times stronger than the essence soul realm. They were likely 9th tribulation realm experts. Ji Tianxing saw that these people were dignified, and noble. He guessed that they were the top nobles of the Chu Yun Empire. Before long, the rainbow auspicious cloud flew to the middle of the square and floated 1,000 feet in the air. The hundreds of thousands of citizens in all directions bowed deeply, maintaining a pious and respectful expression. Even the 15 proud young geniuses kept their backs bent, not daring to stand up. Their expressions were filled with reverence. Emperor Chu Yun swept his dignified gaze across the crowd before raising his hands, indicating for everyone to rise. Chapter 1475. The Emperor of the Chu Yun Empire said a few words to express the importance of the ranking battle. The god's disciple selection was related to the Chu Yun Empire's reputation and glory. As the Holy Emperor, he had to personally host the battle. In addition, the Holy Master and 8 generals of the Chu Yun Empire, as well as the powerful warriors from the major families and sects, would supervise the battle together. After the Emperor of the Chu Yun Empire finished speaking, the Holy Master announced the rules of the ranking battle. The 15 geniuses had already participated in the competition a few days ago. The Holy Master and the powerful warriors present could clearly see everyone's strength and combat strength. Therefore, the rules of the ranking battle were a bit strange. It was different from an ordinary battle. The Holy Master would give the 15 young geniuses a preliminary ranking based on his evaluation. If anyone was not satisfied with the ranking, they could challenge one of the geniuses on the spot. If they won, they could replace that geniuses on the ranking. During the battle, the use of battle pets was prohibited. Injuries were allowed, but no deaths were allowed. Hearing the Holy Master announce the rules of the ranking battle, the hundreds of thousands of people in the plaza were surprised and curious. They were full of anticipation. Then, under everyone's gaze, the Holy Master waved the brush in his hand and shot out 15 balls of golden light. The 15 balls of golden light flew up into the sky and immediately turned into the names of the 15 geniuses. They were ranked from top to bottom. Everyone in the square raised their heads to look at the sky, checking the rankings of the geniuses. The name at the top of the list was Lan Yiqing. She was publicly recognized as the number 1 genius. No one had any objections. The second was Yin Wuk, and the third was Quang Long. Seeing the rankings, the hundreds of thousands of people showed complicated expressions. They started to whisper to each other. Wu Kei smiled as he glanced at Quang Long with a mocking look in his eyes. Quang Long's face turned gloomy. His eyes shone with a fierce light as he glared at Yin Wuk. As for the rankings from the 4th to the 15th, many people did not care. Among the dozen or so young geniuses, many expressed their agreement, but there were also a few who were not convinced and looked eager to give it a try. After a while, the Holy Master waved the brush and signaled for everyone to quiet down. Then, he pointed at the floating arena behind him and announced in a dignified voice, "If anyone has any objections to the rankings, you can step onto the arena now and challenge your ideal ranking. However, each person only has 3 chances to challenge, so you must consider it carefully." Following the sacred expert words, the plaza immediately erupted with world-shaking cheers and shouts. "Mad Dragon! Mad Dragon! Mad Dragon! It's time to prove yourself. Go and challenge Wu Kei. Let's see who is the number 2 genius." Clearly, The hundreds of thousands of spectators were most concerned about this problem. Everyone wanted to see who was stronger, Inwu-K or Mad Dragon. However, Quan Long suppressed his anger for the time being and did not step onto the stage first. The first to enter the arena was the 15th ranked genius. She was a red-dressed woman wielding 2 sabers and had strength at the second firmament primordial spirit realm. When she flew into the sky and landed on the arena, countless people were watching her. Everyone felt that the ranking given by the Sage Master basically wouldn't have any deviation. The woman in red didn't want to be ranked at the bottom, so she went up the stage to challenge. Everyone guessed that she was going to challenge the 14th ranked genius. If she could advance by 1 rank, at least she wouldn't be at the bottom, and her reputation would be better. However, no one expected the woman in red to challenge the 12th ranked genius. The genius being challenged was a skinny young man whose strength was at the pinnacle of the second firmament primordial spirit realm. Most people felt that the woman in red's challenge would probably end in failure. However, the two of them exchanged more than 100 blows on the floating arena before the victor was decided. The result was beyond everyone's expectations. The woman in red used an ultimate move that she had never used before and defeated her opponent, successfully advancing to the 12th rank. This result shocked and incredulous the hundreds of thousands of spectators. At the same time, the crowd also understood that the preliminary ranking given by the Sage Master might not be accurate. After all, the Sage Master ranked the geniuses based on their previous performance. Some geniuses kept a low profile and did not display their true strength or ultimate moves in the previous grand tournament. Thinking of this, the crowd became even more interested in the battle between Mad Dragon and Inwu Quebec. After the woman in red left the arena, Mad Dragon flew into the arena amidst the cheers of the crowd. The spectators in the square were in an uproar as they erupted into tsunami-like cheers. Countless people were agitated as they shouted the names of Mad Dragon and Inwu Quebec. There was no need for Mad Dragon to say anything. Everyone knew who he was going to challenge. Hence, Inwu-K also flew into the sky and landed on the arena with a smile on his face. He and Mad Dragon stood on the arena, and after exchanging a few sarcastic words, they quickly gathered their strength and aura and launched their attacks. Both of them knew that this battle was of utmost importance as it concerned their reputation and future. They used all their strength right from the start and used their strongest ultimate moves. They wanted to defeat each other in the most elegant and domineering way possible. Only in this way could the news of this battle spread throughout the Chu-Yin Empire and their reputations be known by the world. The two of them released a vast amount of mana that condensed into various lights and shadows. They released a dazzling 7-colored brilliance that covered 100 miles of the sky. Destructive spells and ultimate skills collided wantonly in the sky, creating loud, rumbling noises that shook the heavens. The incomparably violent shockwaves continuously battered the defensive light shield of the arena, causing the entire arena to shake violently. The spectators were dazzled by the spectacle as they erupted into cheers and shouts. Ji Tianxing stood in the crowd and observed silently for a long time. Gradually, he figured out what was going on. Inwu-K and Mad Dragon are indeed the strongest young geniuses of the Chu-Yin Empire. Even though they are only at the 5th level of the primordial soul realm, they are able to unleash a battle prowess that is comparable to a 6th level primordial soul realm cultivator. Furthermore, their martial arts foundations are extremely firm, and their mana is boundless. The ultimate moves and secret techniques that they are using are also mysterious and profound. I have never seen them before. After a full 15 minutes, Mad Dragon and Inwu-K had exchanged a few hundred blows before the victor was decided. The result was just like the ranking of the Sage Masters. Mad Dragon was defeated by Inwu-K by a single blow. Immediately, the square was filled with cheers. Mad Dragon retreated from the arena with a dejected expression while Inwu-K smiled proudly at the crowd. After Inwu-K left the arena, the square was in an uproar for a long time. However, no one else went up to challenge him. After 100 breaths of time, the sage masters saw that the geniuses were still hesitating and asked loudly, "Is there no one else who wants to challenge me? Do you have any objections to my ranking?"